Chapter 1124. Muyu comforted little Shuai as he flew in the direction from which he had come. However, after flying for an hour and a quarter of an hour, he saw the Bodhi tree in front of him. As expected, he turned back to his original spot. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran's team had returned to the Bodhi tree with him. The others had yet to return. This time, Muyu regretted his decision. If he had known this would happen, he would have gone in another direction. When he first saw Xiao Shui and Tian Ran, Xiang Nan and the others had been present. Even if Xiao Shui and Tian Ran had something to say, they wouldn't say it in front of others. However, this time, they were the only ones present. Xiao Shui walked from Dummy's shoulder to the branch of the Bodhi tree and looked at Muyu. Tian Ran also stood on the other side of the Bodhi tree and looked at Muyu. The two girls' gazes were meaningful, making Muyu feel uncomfortable. At least we can rule out two paths, Muyu said calmly. Yes, we can rule out that our direction and your direction aren't the exits. Tian Ran nodded with a faint smile. Xiao Shui said to Xiao Shui, Xiao Shui, come here. Xiao Shui was about to agree when he remembered something. He hugged Muyu's neck tightly and shook his head desperately. No, I like Muyu. I love Muyu. I want to be with Muyu. Xiao Shui had learned his lesson this time. He didn't want to get involved in this battle. Otherwise, if he went over, his ears would be pulled again. Muyu hugged Xiao Shui and said seriously, the two of you should treat Xiao Shui better. He's still very cute. Is that so? Tian Ran snorted and sat on the Bodhi tree branch. Muyu patted Xiao Shui's head awkwardly. He coughed and said, let's wait for the others to come back. Dummy didn't understand what these people were talking about. He said innocently, little handsome, can we play together? Xiao Shui quickly nodded, ran to the side, pulled two soft branches, tied a dead knot, and said, let's play on the swing. I want to play on the swing too. Dummy's body shrunk to 2 meters. It learned from Xiao Shui and clumsily tied the knot before sitting on it. Ha! The branches were broken by Dummy's bulky body. Dummy fell into the water, splashing up a lot of water. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran couldn't help but laugh. Dummy climbed out of the water, shook off the water on its body, and laughed foolishly with everyone. Muyu had only created an ordinary Bodhi tree. It was no different from an ordinary tree. Naturally, it couldn't bear Dummy's weight. He asked, Dummy, have you been to the sea before? Dummy nodded. Dummy has been to many places in the ancient battlefield, and has also come to the sea. However, Dummy doesn't like the sea. There are no desolate beasts in the sea, and it's not fun. Furthermore, the sea is too noisy. The sea is too noisy? It's not noisy. There are only waves here, Xiao Shui said. Dummy shook its head and stretched out its pinky to pick its ear. It said, it's not the surface of the sea. It's the sea. There are all kinds of noises in the sea. Dummy doesn't like these kinds of noises. I'll fall asleep after listening to them for a long time. What kind of noises are there in the sea? Xiao Shui said curiously as he jumped down from the swing and into the water, bubbles bubbling up from his body. After a while, Xiao Shui gradually floated up from the water, snoring softly. Xiao Shui actually fell asleep. Little handsome, wake up. Dummy reached out and scooped Xiao Shui up and patted its head. Xiao Shui yawned and woke up. The water is strange, Xiao Shui said, puzzled. What's strange? Muyu asked. I felt like someone was calling me. When I wanted to listen carefully, I realized that my head was a little groggy, and I wanted to sleep. Xiao Shui yawned again. Muyu was a little surprised. He immediately jumped into the water. The water was clear and transparent. After he jumped into the water, the sound of the waves suddenly disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a strange scream. It sounded like someone was screaming, but it also sounded like someone was screaming. It didn't stop, and Muyu's eardrums were in a mess. It felt as if there were many needles stabbing his brain. He couldn't take it anymore and quickly got up. What's wrong? What did you hear? Xiao Shui asked. Muyu frowned. I don't feel sleepy. I just feel very uncomfortable. It sounded like someone was screaming. Xiao Shui hesitated for a moment before jumping into the water. After a while, she exclaimed and came out of the water. Panting, she said doubtfully, I heard it. I heard it. What did you hear? Muyu asked. Xiao Shui shook her head and clenched her teeth. It was the villagers cursing me. Tion Ran felt very strange and also dived into the water. After a while, she also jumped out and said nervously, I heard it. I heard the voices of all my fellow disciples in Red Dust sect. But they are all dead. The more Muyu thought about it, the more puzzled he became. Different people heard different voices. This time, he calmed down and once again sank into the sea. He tried his best to resist those sharp voices. Soon after, he heard it clearly. Those were the screams of the residents of East Sand City. Muyu raised his head. His ears were filled with buzzing sounds, and his chest was undulating. What's wrong? Your complexions don't look too good. Why? At this time, Shimenwuji and Wan Wan rushed over. After 2 breaths, Luo Shang also turned into a flame and appeared here. Clearly, they had also circled around and returned to their original place. However, their journey was much farther than Muyu's group. There's a problem with the sea, Muyu said. Their group had been looking for a way out of the sea, but they had neglected the sea beneath them. Shimenwuji lazily said, What's wrong with the sea? He shrugged and directly jumped into the sea. After a while, Shimenwuji also floated on the water and fell asleep. Pa! Wan Wan walked over and unceremoniously slapped him awake. She said, Can you be a bit more mature? You actually fell asleep? Shimenwuji covered his face and bitterly said, Wan Wan, be gentler. What did you hear? Muyu asked. Shimenwuji shook his head. Nothing, I just feel very sleepy. Wan Wan, do you want to try? I'm too lazy to try. Wan Wan rolled her eyes at Shimenwuji. This was strange. What exactly was this sea? Why was everyone's reaction so strange? Soon, Qingyan and Xiaoran also came back. After hearing what Muyu and the others said, Qingyan frowned and lightly exclaimed, Senior brother, do you know what the sea means? Muyu asked. Qingyan dived into the water and quickly jumped out. After a moment of silence, he said, I understand. I've heard Master talk about it before. If I'm not wrong, this is the Permitha Sea of Memories. Permitha Sea of Memories? What does that mean? Muyu had never heard of this before. The Permitha Sea of Memories. In this sea, it will make you recall the memories that you don't want to face the most. The memories that you don't want to recall will flood into your mind and torture you until you can't bear it anymore. If you stay in the sea for too long, you will even be tortured to death. Chengyan said. Then why did I fall asleep? Little Shuai asked, puzzled. Chengyan said helplessly, A heartless person won't think too much and will fall asleep. Brother Chengyan, your words are a little hurtful. How am I heartless? I've been merciful all over the cultivation world. Shimenwuji spread out his hands. Muyu heard the screams of the people he slaughtered in Dongsha City. Xiao Shui heard the curses of the villagers when she was captured and burned to death when she was young. Tian Ran heard the dead people of the mortal world sect. Between Little Shuai and Dummy, one was carefree and the other was simple and honest. They didn't have many deep memories. As for Shimenwuji, as a person of the evil sect, he didn't have any sense of right or wrong. He did things according to his heart, and he didn't have any past that he didn't want to look back on. Permitha Sea of Memories. What's the meaning of this thing's existence? Is it to trap us here? Wan Wan asked. Qingyan said, I'm afraid that's the case. They had already split up, but they still came back after walking for a while. This was enough to explain the situation. Muyu stood on the surface of the water and said, I think the way out of here is very clear. Where is it? Shimenwuji asked. Do you still need to ask? Of course it's under our feet. Isn't that right, little brother Muyu? Wan Wan threw a coquettish glance at Muyu. Muyu felt a headache as he looked at Wan who was always intentionally or unintentionally flirting with him. He also felt 2 unkind gazes from the side. He felt helpless in his heart and hated Wan so much that he gritted his teeth. I think the bottom of the sea is very likely to be the way out. The key is how do we get to the bottom of the sea? Muyu had already tried to merge into the trees and dive to the bottom of the sea. However, even with the help of the trees, he was still affected by the voice in his mind and couldn't dive down. No wonder the way out was so dangerous. From the moment they stepped into the sea, they couldn't turn back or leave. They could only be trapped here forever, which was almost equivalent to death. We can only wait for the others to come back before we make a plan. Qingyan tried, but he also couldn't stand the voice. Soon, Chu Xiaoqi and Gu Yitian also circled around and returned. Only Xiangnan and Yu Mo hadn't returned yet. However, they waited for another 4 hours, and Xiangnan and Yu Mo still hadn't returned. This made everyone nervous. What was going on? 6 hours have passed. Xiangnan shouldn't have forgotten the time, Mu Yu said in a deep voice. Could it be that they encountered an accident? Cheng Yin and Mu Yu looked at each other. At the beginning, Mu Yu told everyone that they could fly for 6 hours at most. If they didn't return in 6 hours, they would crush the jade and return to the original place. Then, they would call everyone to explore together. However, 6 hours had passed, and Xiangnan and Yu Mo still hadn't returned. If it weren't for the fact that Xiangnan's cultivation was higher than Yu Mo's, perhaps they would have been worried that Yu Mo might have used some tricks along the way. However, with Xiangnan's ability, there was no way he would have given Yu Mo any chance to do anything. Chapter 1125. What if Xiangnan and the others return after crushing the jade? Mu Yu asked. This was a very serious problem. Qingyan pondered for a moment, then said, Then you guys wait here. I'll make a trip there myself. No matter what, we'll come back. I'll go with you. I have the heart-seeking guide, so I can find them, Mu Yu said. Okay. Qingyan didn't object. Little Shuai jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder, and the three of them directly headed in the direction that Xiangnan and Yu Mo had gone. The others didn't say anything. In this kind of place, they could only rely on Qingyan and Mu Yu. Their words were very important. Mu Yu had a preliminary understanding of the heart-seeking guide. However, there was a limit to its effectiveness. If they were too far away, they wouldn't be able to find them. And at this moment, regardless of whether Mu Yu wanted to find Xiangnan or Yu Mo, the heart-seeking guide didn't respond at all. Where did they go? Mu Yu was puzzled. Even if it was 6 hours, logically speaking, they shouldn't have left the range of the heart-seeking guide. Qingyan's expression was solemn, and he said, Let's go and take a look first. This time, they had already sped up as much as possible. After flying over the vast sea for 2 whole hours, the two of them were slightly startled. The two of them had actually returned to their original spot. Why did you guys return? But Xiangnan didn't. Luo Shang asked in a deep voice. Qingyan and Mu Yu were also deeply puzzled. Just what had happened? The path that Xiangnan and Yu Mo had taken was also to return to their original spot. However, the two of them didn't return as planned. Could it be that something unexpected happened along the way? Mu Yu's heart sank. The heart-seeking guide didn't show any signs of activity along the way. It didn't show any signs of the two of them. It was as if Xiangnan and Yu Mo had left this sea. Could it be that they've already found a way to leave this place? For example, they found a way to cross this sea? Shimin Hao asked. This matter was indeed strange, but no one knew how to cross the sea. Once they entered the sea, they would be affected by the strange sound. They would either fall into a deep sleep, or their eardrums would not be able to withstand it. There was no way to block it. I have to find Xiangnan no matter what, Cheng Yin said. Xiao Ran said, Are you sure you don't want to think of a way to leave first? Since Bai Jie was able to break the extreme immortal steel, it means that he has found a way to counter perfect river and mountain. Right now, the third heaven is probably in an abyss of suffering. It is not a good idea for us to delay here. Luo Shang coldly replied, What does the life and death of a third heavenly layer cultivator have to do with us? What does that have to do with you? Xiao Ran said, Indeed, the matter of the third layer of heaven has nothing to do with me. I'm just reminding you out of kindness. If you don't like it, just pretend I didn't say anything. Qingyan was silent for a moment and said, Let's think of a way to leave this place first. Luo Shang might not care about the life and death of the third-floor palace cultivators, but Qingyan had to. Then Xiangnan. Luo Shang frowned. If we find a way to leave, you guys go first. I will stay behind to look for Xiangnan, Qingyan said. Luo Shang snorted softly and did not say anything. However, they were in trouble again. They guessed that the path was at the bottom of the sea, but the problem was that no one could stay underwater for more than 10 seconds. Even Xiao Shui could not do it. What should they do now? This was the question on everyone's mind. Muyu suddenly thought of something and said, "Little Shuai, you know how to set up a teleportation array, right?" Little Shuai puffed out his chest and said proudly, "Of course. After all, I am the one who named this commander teleportation array. Okay?" When Muyu had created the commander teleportation array, he had used Little Shuai as a test subject. Little Shuai had shamelessly insisted on naming the array, so Muyu had not objected. However, Little Shuai had been following Muyu all this time, so he basically knew all the array techniques that Muyu knew. Muyu said, "Okay, now, you're the only one who can stay in my Mu Ling without suffocating. I will send you into the sea. If we find a way out in the sea, you will set up a commander teleportation array and teleport us all out. Do you understand?" Little Shuai did not understand and said, "But I will fall asleep in the sea. If you fall asleep without a care, there won't be any accidents. If there is an exit under the sea, I will try to wake you up at that time," Muyu said. Everyone's eyes lit up. This was a good idea. Now, everyone else would be affected by the strange sound in the sea. Only Little Shuai, Dummy, Shiman Wuji, and Wanwan would not be affected. In comparison, Little Shuai was thick-skinned, invulnerable, smart, and knew array techniques. Letting him do this was undoubtedly the most reassuring. Why didn't you use this method before? If you set up an array technique before entering the extreme immortal monument, we might have already left, Wanwan asked. Muyu shook his head. I didn't know that this would happen. Moreover, the ancient battlefield might be very far away from our third heaven. The distance of the commander teleportation array is limited. Then you guys have to protect me. If Muyu's Mu Ling gets bitten by something, you guys will lose this commander forever. Little Shuai took a bite of the apple and said, "Don't worry. Qingyan and Xiao Shui's metal spirit and water spirit will protect you. The three of us will escort you," Muyu said. "That's good," Little Shuai said with satisfaction. Muyu set up a few more commander teleportation arrays and engraved the array technique for the teleportation location on the Mu Ling. Little Shuai set it up and turned the Mu Ling into a 1-meter square wooden hut. This wooden hut was set up according to Little Shuai's requirements. It even had a comfortable wooden bed. Little Shuai took a blanket and a few drumsticks from Muyu before entering the wooden hut and said, "Okay, you can seal it now." The others were also quite helpless. Little Shuai was a mischievous guy. He even had to prepare food when he was asked to do something. However, Muyu also understood Little Shuai. He tried his best to make the wooden hut comfortable before sealing it completely. Then, he quickly extended the Mu Ling and brought the wooden hut to the bottom of the sea. Wood was buoyant at the bottom of the sea, but Muyu had turned the Mu Ling into a kind of heavy wood that could suppress the buoyancy. He didn't dare go down into the Mu Ling himself, so he could only rely on Little Shuai. Qingyan's metal spirit also covered the left side of the Mu Ling and followed the Mu Ling down. If anything happened around them, or if something at the bottom of the sea tried to cut off the Mu Ling, he would be able to react in time. Xiao Shui's water spirit covered the right side. When it came into contact with Muyu's Mu Ling, the two of them had a strange connection. The two of them were able to communicate telepathically again. "You have to give me an explanation when we get back." Xiao Shui's voice rang out in Muyu's mind. Muyu felt a headache coming on. "Senior Qingyan is here. Protect Little Shuai first." Xiao Shui glared at Muyu. Tian Ran sat on Dummy's shoulder gloomily and looked at Muyu unhappily. In Muyu's senses, Little Shuai fell asleep as soon as it entered the sea. It only ate half of the apple and was snoring in a deep sleep. Mu Ling reflected the scenery around the bottom of the sea. Unfortunately, in Mu Ling's senses, the bottom of the sea was pitch black. There was no light that could penetrate the bottom of the sea, and the visibility around it wasn't very good. However, the pressure at the bottom of the sea was getting stronger and stronger. It was so strong that it could even crush a tribulation passing stage self-cultivator. Muyu was secretly shocked. What exactly was this sea of reminiscence? How could it produce such a terrifying pressure? Mu Ling continued to sink into the depths of the sea. After sinking for a full 2 hours, it still hadn't reached the bottom. Gradually, Muyu realized that the powerful pressure was getting more and more terrifying. In the end, it reached the point where even a great vehicle stage self-cultivator would find it difficult to bear. What's hidden under the sea? Muyu and Chengyan looked at each other. Both of them were great vehicle stage self-cultivators. Naturally, they understood what this pressure meant. Even if they weren't affected by the sound when they entered the sea, ordinary great vehicle stage self-cultivators wouldn't be able to bear it. This place was really strange. It was so powerful that it was abnormal. However, Muyu felt that this pressure was familiar. He suddenly understood. Right, this is the pressure of the space barrier. When Muyu went to the second heaven, he relied on Mu Ling to pass through the spiritual energy eye and enter the space barrier to return to the third heaven. It was also thanks to Mu Ling's indestructible body that he was able to withstand the powerful pressure. Qingyan also reacted. Could it be that the space barrier is under the sea of reminiscence? Then, does the ancient battlefield exist in an independent world, or does it float in space? This was a mystery that couldn't be solved for the time being. Muyu and Chengyan didn't think too much about it. They focused their attention on little Shuai's small wooden house. No matter what, little Shuai was their hope now. Nothing must happen to him. However, at this moment, a terrifying current suddenly rose from the bottom of the sea. Like a volcanic eruption, it began to hit the small wooden house. The water below seemed to become more and more unstable. Then, a huge tentacle suddenly appeared from the darkness and swept fiercely on Mu Ling's metal spirit and water spirit. Oh no, what's that? Mu Yu and the other two were shocked. They tried to control the direction, but because Mu Ling, metal spirit, and water spirit were too long, it was difficult to control them. The small wooden house where little Shuai was hiding was directly grabbed by the tentacle. A huge pulling force came from the wood spirit, and the terrifying tentacle actually wanted to snatch the small wooden house away from him. Mu Yu and the other two were pulled by the huge tentacle. The three of them were unable to resist the strength of the huge tentacle. They were directly pulled into the water and sank dozens of meters. A sharp explosion immediately sounded from the seawater, exploding in their minds. Chapter 11:26. Muyu also felt like his head was about to be torn apart by the noise, as if countless needles were stabbing his brain, but he still endured the severe pain in his head, grabbed Xiao Shui, and pushed her out of the water. At the same time, the others waiting outside had already pulled Xiao Shui out in time. Everyone's expression changed slightly. None of them had expected such a change to occur in the sea. The strength of Qingyan and Mu Yu was obvious to all, and they had thought that with Qingyan and Mu Yu here, even if there was a desolate beast at the bottom of the sea, it would be impossible for it to gain any advantage. However, even with the combined strength of Qingyan and Mu Yu, they had still been dragged down by the unknown tentacles at the bottom of the sea. The strength of the terrifying, desolate beast at the bottom of the sea had probably exceeded everyone's expectations. After Xiao Shui recovered, the water spirit in her hand swept out again, sinking into the sea and quickly wrapping around Mu Yu and Qingyan, who were struggling in pain at the bottom of the sea. She wanted to pull them up, but the force was too strong. Xiao Shui hadn't stepped into the Great Ascension stage yet, so she couldn't pull them up by herself. Fortunately, Dummy grabbed the water spirit in time, and his strength was surprisingly great, stopping Mu Yu and Chengyan from falling. The others also reacted, each of them grabbing one end of the water spirit and desperately pulling them out of the water. Mu Yu and Qingyan were already pale. The terrifying force had almost caused them to lose consciousness and fall into a deep sleep. Even the two of them couldn't deal with the strangeness of the sea. But even if they were out of the sea at this time, the mysterious tentacles at the bottom of the sea were still trying to drag them back into the water. Qingyan and Mu Yu firmly controlled the metal spirit and Mu Ling, and with the help of the others, they were in a deadlock with the tentacles at the bottom of the sea. What the hell is this thing? Mu Yu asked, gritting his teeth. I don't know, but to be able to survive in this terrifying sea that can threaten Great Ascension stage cultivators, its strength is beyond our imagination. Qingyan quickly said. The others didn't know what was going on at the bottom of the sea, so they could only look at each other. After a while, Luo Shang asked, "How is little commander?" Before Mu Yu could answer, the entire surface of the sea suddenly began to violently tumble and boil. It was as if the sea water was being boiled. Monstrous waves kept spreading out, and the waves actually reached hundreds of meters, pouring down towards them. "Be careful!" Mu Yu roared, and everyone soared into the sky. When they stopped a few thousand meters above the sea, the entire sea was roaring violently. Countless pitch-black tentacles appeared and disappeared in the waves. Each tentacle was 1,000 meters long and dozens of meters thick. No one had ever seen such a monster before. This monster was so powerful that it was shocking. This monster had at least tens of thousands of tentacles, and the destruction caused by each tentacle was actually faintly mixed with the power of a domain. What shocked them the most was that after this monster's tentacles rolled out, the top of each tentacle was actually connected to a powerful desolate beast. These desolate beasts were extremely huge, similar to the desolate beasts they had seen in the ancient battlefield's domains. And the tentacles were not only connected to wild beasts, but also flesh-winged horn monsters, soul race people, ghost race people, and even human cultivators. These people's eyes were scarlet, flashing with a ruthless and bloodthirsty light. They stared coldly at Mu Yu and the others in the sky. "What kind of wild beast is this?" Chu Xiaoqi couldn't help but ask. No one could answer his question. The strength of this monster had exceeded everyone's imagination. It was more like a combination of all kinds of creatures. It had pressed the human race, the foreign race, and even the desolate beasts into its tentacles. Little Shuai had already been transferred up by Mu Yu through Mu Ling fortunately. Little Shuai's physique was special and could merge with the trees like Mu Yu. At the moment of danger, Mu Yu pulled Little Shuai up. At this moment, Little Shuai woke up dizzily. He yawned and asked, "What did I miss?" Dummy said innocently, "Little Shuai, we're going to catch octopus monsters. Do you like to eat barbecue?" Little Shuai blinked and stared at the monster below for a long time. Suddenly, he said in surprise, "Isn't this the Sky Devourer?" Everyone glanced at Little Shuai. "What's the Sky Devourer?" Little Shuai shook his head. "I don't remember either. Anyway, I vaguely remember this guy. I think I've seen it somewhere before. Once this guy swallows something, the thing it swallows will become a part of itself. All of the other party's cultivation will also be taken away. The tigers, humans, pigs, flesh-winged monsters, and ghosts you saw in the tentacles were all swallowed by it and became a part of its body." "It's that powerful?" Mu Yu was shocked. His attention was on the two humans. The two cultivators' bodies were faintly flickering with powerful Great Ascension Stage auras. This meant that they were also Great Ascension Stage cultivators when they were alive, but they actually died in this place. And if each tentacle was a wild beast, this meant that this monster had swallowed at least thousands of wild beasts. Everyone was shocked by Little Shuai's words. What exactly was this so-called Sky Devourer? Just as everyone was bewildered, the countless giant tentacles under the sea were already rolling towards them. Everyone immediately spread out and used their own abilities to deal with this giant tentacle monster. For a moment, all kinds of spiritual energy surged in the sky. Rays of light shone brightly, and the sword aura and domain were mixed within. "Dummy, protect Xiao Shui and Tian Ranwell." Mu Yu shouted and narrowly avoided the sharp horn attack of a tiger rhinoceros. When the tiger rhinoceros's sharp horn pierced through, the air became hot and restless, as if it was going to pierce a big hole in the void. The tiger rhinoceros on the tentacles had a cultivation that was far beyond the ordinary Great Ascension Stage. The others were also attacked by their own tentacles. Everyone had already used their powerful domain, but they could only fight to a draw with the wild beasts on the tentacles with all their strength. When they went all out, countless tentacles swept over again, covering the sky and covering the sun. They were densely packed and seemed endless. No one knew how many wild beasts they had swallowed. "Go, leave this place and don't continue fighting." Yin slashed the tentacle saber-tooth in front of him into ashes with his sword, then shouted at everyone. Although not every tentacle of the monster in the Permethasol Sea was a wild beast at the Great Ascension stage, it was not something they could deal with. They might be able to kill a wild beast on one of the tentacles if they tried their best, but there was an endless stream of tentacles emerging from the water. The tentacle monster could not be killed at all. Everyone had no desire to continue fighting, so they could only skim away. The tentacle monster did not chase after them. It just looked at them coldly from behind, then disappeared into the bottom of the sea. Only then did everyone stop in bewilderment. They stood in the sky with palpitating hearts. Just now, everyone had used all kinds of means, and everyone had used their most powerful domain. Even so, they only managed to break a few tentacles. However, there were more tentacles stirring up trouble. If they continued fighting, it was only a matter of time before they lost. Among everyone, Dummy was the most violent. He directly cut off a tentacle, and the eagle wild beast that was connected to the tentacle was torn into pieces by him. Little Handsome, take this tentacle. It's edible. It's delicious. I've eaten it before. Dummy laughed foolishly as he ran. At this time, Dummy had turned back into a giant hundreds of meters tall. Dummy, have you encountered this tentacle monster before? Muyu was really surprised by Dummy's strength. Dummy was a little silly, but his cultivation level was surprisingly high. Dummy scratched his head and hugged a tentacle that was dozens of meters thick and was still twitching. He said, Dummy has encountered it before at the beach. It wanted to catch me, so I pulled out its tentacles. However, I couldn't beat it. Every time I pulled out a tentacle, I quickly ran ashore. Last time, I roasted it with fire. It was delicious. Really? Luo Shang. Then hurry up and light a fire for me. I want to try it too. Be careful not to burn it, Little Handsome said excitedly. Muyu and the others were speechless. This kind of powerful monster, Dummy actually dared to pull the teeth from the tiger's mouth, and even roasted its tentacles to eat. Dummy and Little Handsome, these two guys really had good teeth and good appetites. They dared to eat anything and were not picky about food at all. So, this powerful monster at the bottom of the sea is the guy guarding the exit. As long as we don't provoke it at sea, it seems that it won't attack us. Then, how do we bypass it and leave here? Shimin Wuji asked. I think it's not that it won't attack us. It's waiting for us to run out of energy to deal with us. If we can't escape, it is all the time to waste with us, Muyu said. Anyone who entered this soul-returning sea would have their escape route cut off. They would be walking aimlessly on the sea and would quickly fall into despair. At that time, when they were exhausted, the tentacle monster would come out and devour them. As for the competition of time, the tentacle monster would definitely live longer than them. A cultivator's lifespan of 1 or 200 years was insignificant to it. Not everyone who could come here was like Muyu and a small number of people who had the body of immortality. Moreover, Muyu couldn't afford to waste time because they had to hurry back to the third layer of heaven. They couldn't beat it, and they couldn't run away. Right now, they were in a dilemma. Do you think Xiang Nan and the others will also encounter this tentacle monster? Luo Shang asked. Qingyan and Muyu also didn't know. They didn't want to think about this result. Muyu said straightforwardly, Xiang Nan won't. He's very strong. Maybe they found an exit and accidentally left here. No matter what, let's all take a break first. We have to maintain our peak energy and be wary of the tentacle monster's sneak attack, Chengyan said. Everyone sat cross-legged in the void and didn't speak anymore. Xiao Shuai and Dummy really started to grill the tentacles of the tentacle monster. Luo Shang reluctantly became the cook. The fire was in place. Soon, a strange fragrance spread over the entire sea. Unfortunately, other than Xiao Shuai and Dummy, the others didn't have any appetite. Should we try somewhere else? Tian Ran asked. I'm afraid it's useless to try anywhere else. This is already a sealed maze. As long as we enter the water, we'll be detected no matter where we are. We have to think of another way, Muyu said. Everyone was thinking. At that moment, a huge roar exploded in the distance. Violent waves of air rolled over. The entire sea seemed to have been turned upside down by someone. A curtain of water, tens of thousands of feet high, swept out. Chapter 11:27. Everyone looked at the waves in the distance in confusion. They were also quite puzzled. Could it be that the tentacle monster was attacking someone in the distance? Muyu hesitated for a moment, then said, "Let's go and take a look." This area of the sea had always been calm and tranquil. It was only after the appearance of the tentacle monster that these abnormalities occurred. Now that Xiangnan and Umo had both disappeared, perhaps the disturbance here was caused by the two of them. After flying for half an hour, they arrived at the scene of the incident. Then they saw a shocking scene. A huge sea tornado formed in the sky above the sea 1,000 meters away, piercing straight into the sky. Powerful formation patterns appeared high up in the sky, forming a gap as if it had been split open. Countless rays of starlight poured down from the gap, illuminating the sea. At this time, a huge island had appeared on the surface of the sea. On the island, there was a majestic palace. It was dazzling in gold and jade, and it emitted a majestic aura that resonated with the brilliance of the stars in the sky. As for Xiangnan and Umo, they were in the air above the palace, dodging the terrifying tentacle monster. It's Xiangnan and the others. Muyu had already rushed towards Xiangnan to help him. Xiangnan was facing dozens of wild beasts by himself. He seemed to be having a hard time. Yumo's aura was weak. Her entire body was a shadow, but at this time, the shadow had cracked from the shoulder. It seemed to have been injured by the tentacle monster. Bang! Muyu kicked away the tentacle that was sweeping towards Xiangnan. The shadow clone sword slashed down from the sky, directly cutting off the tentacle. The sword chi instantly turned all the tentacles into powder. They had already landed on an isolated island and were floating in the air above the palace. "What's going on? Where did you guys go just now?" Muyu asked. "We accidentally saw this island and wanted to come over to investigate, but we didn't expect this place to be so strange. As soon as we stepped on the island, the entire island disappeared. The sea also disappeared. It was as if we were imprisoned in an empty space until I broke a mirror in the empty space to escape. I didn't expect that the moment we came out, this tentacle monster would suddenly appear from the bottom of the sea," Xiangnan quickly explained. When they appeared on the island, the tentacle monster seemed to be even more manic. It roared and pounced toward them. Countless tentacles swept in all directions, as if it wanted to chase them away from the island. It was obvious that this island was something extremely important to it. It didn't allow others to set foot on it. What's the mystery of this island? Muyu was puzzled. Ever since they came to the ancient battlefield, everything they saw was ruins. This was the first time they saw a complete building on the island. Muyu carefully observed the tentacle monster's movements. He realized that when the tentacle monster attacked them, each tentacle was very careful. It didn't dare to destroy the island. "Everyone land on the island," Muyu shouted. No one understood why, but they still did as they were told. Just as they quickly landed on the island, the tentacle monster's attack had already stopped. It angrily hovered above the island. Countless tentacles covered the sky and covered the sun. They swept across above, but did not dare to land on the island. Everyone was relieved. At least for now, it seemed safe. What is this place? It's actually so strange. Muyu stood on the island. He squatted down and touched the rocks and vegetation on the island. They were all real. "Let's go to the palace and take a look," Muyu suggested. Everyone followed the small path to the entrance of the palace. The architectural style of the palace was different from the third heaven. The entire palace was octagonal. The walls of the palace were made of strange materials. Muyu pushed open the door of the palace. A vast aura greeted them. What they saw inside wasn't a staircase to the throne, but a bottomless abyss. The abyss was crooked. They didn't know where it led to. Beside the abyss was surging seawater. The seawater seemed to be forcibly separated by a mysterious force, forming a passage. Could this passage be the exit? Muyu said in surprise. To call it a passage, it was actually a little too big. The entrance of the passage filled the entire palace. It was nearly 100 meters in diameter. The seawater on both sides intertwined. The waves occasionally hit the walls of the passage. "Let's give it a try." Qingyan took the lead and carefully went down the passage. Because there was seawater on both sides, This was the Permitha Soul Sea. As long as they were surrounded by seawater, a sharp and painful sound would appear in their minds. So they had to be careful. Qingyan carefully descended 10 meters and shouted to the others, "It's okay." That sound didn't appear again. Looks like this is the exit. Everyone use your territory to protect yourselves to avoid any problems. The others were overjoyed when they heard this and quickly followed. Everyone followed the passage formed by the seawater and spiraled down. They hadn't gone far when the tentacles of the tentacle monster suddenly rushed out of the seawater and fiercely pounced on them. But those tentacles were blocked by a force on both sides of the passage. The seawater was still surging. The tentacle monster couldn't rush in. They kept going down. The tentacle monster rolled around angrily and kept going down with them. "Little octopus, come again if you have the guts." "You can't catch me, haha." Dummy laughed at the tentacle monster. "If it comes, I'll roast it again," Dummy said naively. Except for these two guys who didn't know much about the world, the others didn't dare to let down their guard. In this place, they had to be aware of the upcoming danger. Although the tentacle monster was chasing after them, who knew what other dangers were waiting in front of them? But fortunately, after all of them entered the tunnel, everything was calm and peaceful. The further they went down, the stronger the pressure around them. Muyu protected Xiao Shui and Tian Ran and helped them share the pressure. They had the lowest cultivation level here. Qingyan also used his territory ability to help Gu Yiqian resist the pressure. After turning a corner, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. They could already see the exit of the passage. They were surprised to find that in front of them was a sky full of stars. Whoosh! Everyone flew out of the passage and was suddenly shocked speechless by the scene in front of them. The sky was full of stars, and countless stones were floating in the void under their feet. They didn't know where they were. When they looked up, the Permitha Soul Sea was actually above them. The sea was rolling above them, but it was always blocked by a strange force. At this time, they were really under the sea. "Where are we?" Tian Ran couldn't help but exclaim. Muyu and Little Shui looked at each other in dismay. After a long while, they said, "This is a space barrier." When the two of them were in the third layer of heaven, they had seen space barriers more than once. Whether it was the space barrier between the spiritual Qi eyes, the Mayan mountain range, or the ghost pit in the gate of hell, they were all space barriers. Qingyan said with a dignified expression, "The space barrier here is too oppressive. If we weren't in the Deshang stage, I'm afraid we would be destroyed in an instant." "No, I'm not afraid," Little Shui said indifferently. Dummy touched his head. Dummy is also not afraid. Muyu now finally understood that in order to enter the space barrier, the cultivation level must be at least in the Deshang stage. When he came to the space barrier before, he was blocked by the powerful array laid down by his master. "Then how are we going to go back through here?" Wanwan asked. Shi and Shiman Wuji leaned against each other. Two completely different auras circulated around each other, jointly resisting this powerful oppression. Little Shui sniffed, pointed to the left, and shouted, There's the third layer of heaven." Everyone looked in the direction he pointed. In the distance, there was a huge land. It was so big that it was shocking. It was boundless and vast. It occupied an area in the space barrier. The whole land was wrapped in golden array patterns. These golden array patterns were like a hard barrier, blocking all the dangers in the space barrier outside. This land was also floating in the void. There was no support point below it. It was like an incomparably huge island, slowly floating in the void. Everyone carefully flew along the stones of the space barrier to the land in the distance. There were countless stones floating in the space barrier, and they even saw the ruins of some buildings which were broken into pieces and drifted in this space barrier. Some floating objects were impressively abandoned cities. They were at least tens of thousands of square meters in size. They drifted in the space barrier like ghost cities. There was no sign of human habitation, but they drifted in the void. Such a powerful oppression actually didn't destroy these buildings. What are the buildings here made of? Muyu carefully passed over half of the damaged city. He was also surprised in his heart. He always thought that the space barrier was at most made of stones. Now that he thought about it, perhaps these stones were part of some building. They saw with their own eyes that two floating cities collided with each other and then slowly separated from each other, leaving behind a few broken stones, which continued to drift in the space barrier. There is actually a mountain in the space barrier. Everyone looked at the huge mountain in front of them. It was at least 10,000 meters tall, but this mountain was slanted. There was no vegetation on it, only stones which rippled in the air. It was extremely mysterious. It drifted forward and forcibly knocked an abandoned city into two halves, leaving behind a muffled sound. Chapter 1128. It was impossible to survive the space barrier without reaching the Mahayana stage. This kind of strong oppression was too strong, and only by relying on one's domain could one resist it. Every Mahayana stage cultivator had comprehended their own domain rules, and these heavenly Tao rules were refined and controlled by them. As long as they were in their own domain, they could resist the invasion of the space barrier. Dummy reached out and grabbed a floating stone and said excitedly, "Master once said that these floating stones and buildings are the stars in the sky, and these stars all revolve around the sun. I've plucked another little star." Dummy touched the little stone in his hand like a child, and then carefully let go of the floating stone. He said happily, "Little star, be careful. Don't break, or else Dummy won't be able to see you when I look up." Mu Yu and the others looked at each other, and he couldn't help but ask, "My master said that these stones are stars?" Dummy nodded. "Yes, master used to take me and Little Handsome everywhere to play. He said that our three continents are also a little star in other people's worlds, and that the shining star we see is a world. It's just that some worlds are very far away from us, and some worlds are very close to us. He also said that the second layer of heaven and the third layer of heaven are almost overlapping, but they are in different spaces." Dummy doesn't understand what this means. Then does that mean that there are people living on every star? Muyu continued to ask. Dummy scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "Master said that only 9 stars are inhabited, and the races on the other stars have been destroyed. Master also said that Dummy accidentally destroyed another star, so only 8 stars are inhabited. When Dummy destroyed a star, it was equivalent to destroying an entire world. This kind of ability shocked everyone. This dummy fellow is really scary." Chu Xiaoqi squeezed out these words after a long time. A simple, honest, and silly fellow had actually destroyed an entire world. How terrifying. Dummy isn't scary. Dummy is very obedient. They provoke me first, Dummy explained. Little Handsome said casually, "It's okay, Dummy. If anyone provokes you in the future, I'll protect you." Dummy nodded and said happily, "Dummy likes Little Handsome." They quickly approached the spatial barrier outside the 3 continents. Then, they were surprised to find an even stranger place. They finally understood what Dummy meant when it said that the 3rd heaven and the 2nd heaven overlapped. Then the next level is the 2nd heaven, right? Little Shuai said in surprise. The 3-layered continent was like a floating island. Below the island was another island. However, some parts of this island were connected to the 3-layered continent, while some parts were not. The 2-layered continent was completely inverted from the 3-layered continent. It was as if the 3 continents were the front and the 2 continents were the back. What was different was that ever since they entered the spatial barrier, there was no distinction between the sky and the ground. It was only because they came out of the sea of soul's resurrection from the Permitha that they subconsciously treated the sea above them as the ground. And now, in the process of floating, there was no restriction of gravity, so they couldn't tell up from down, left from right. As long as one turned around, they would find that the 2nd heaven was above and the 3rd heaven was below. The relationship between the 2nd heaven and the 3rd heaven was that some of the continents were connected, while some were independent. This world is really strange. Shimin Wuji interrupted from his side. Other than Dummy, it was the first time that everyone had come to this world and seen the appearance of this world with their own eyes. This kind of scene was not something that everyone had the chance to see, because the 3rd heaven had a powerful array. Even people in the Mahayana realm would find it difficult to leave at will. Our top priority now is to return to the 3rd heaven. Muyu forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and came to the periphery of the third heaven continent. The outside of the third heaven continent was protected by a powerful array pattern. The arrangement of these array patterns was very familiar. It was impressively made by Mu Yu's master, Jianing Chunfeng. Master set up these arrays to prevent the outsiders from other worlds from invading the third heaven. Then how do we enter? Luo Shang asked. Qingyan said, after the perfect land and mountain array was activated, the array of the third heaven continent has become unbreakable. All the loopholes have been sealed, so we can't enter. Then how did you enter the White Realm? How did your Shadowless clan and Shadowless clan enter the third heaven? Luo Shang glanced at Xiao Ran, and Mo Xiao Ran said, according to historical records, our two clans entered thousands of years ago. It is said that Jianing Chunfeng allowed us to enter at that time. Moreover, with him around, the other outsiders did not dare to enter at will. But now that he has disappeared, there is no one to protect this world. As for the White Realm, I think he must have used something like the Extreme Immortal Tablets teleportation array to forcefully break through the protection of the perfect land and mountain array with the help of the Heaven Keeper. The teleportation array could teleport them from the third heaven to the ancient battlefield. Perhaps there was a way to teleport outsiders from other worlds to the third heaven. Originally, the third heaven was a sealed world, but Jianing Chunfeng was not there. The Heaven Keeper must know how to deal with this layer of defense. Unfortunately, the current situation was that Mu Yu and the others did not have that kind of teleportation array, so they were unable to enter the third heaven. The entire third heaven was like a sealed space that protected the inside tightly. Mu Yu was deep in thought for a long time. He circled the golden array pattern and realized that the golden array pattern could no longer be broken. Even with his current array skills, he could not do it. Even now, his cultivation was far from his master's level in the past. So, are we trapped in a space barrier now? Gui Tian asked. No one knew how to get in. Even Cheng Yin was at his wit's end. However, Dummy said naively, didn't Dummy lead the questioning heart to Amu? The questioning heart can lead Amu to where he wants to go. The questioning heart? Mu Yu took out the golden compass in shock. At that moment, the black and white array patterns on the golden compass were spinning rapidly. The moment Mu Yu took it out, the compass automatically flew toward the array pattern outside the third heaven. Then, it stuck closely to the array outside the third heaven. Buzz! A clear and ancient sound rang out from the truth-seeking guide. The truth-seeking guide began to spin, becoming bigger and bigger. It gradually emitted a majestic aura that rushed into the surroundings, causing powerful and vast ripples to appear. Then, the questioning heart began to form an 8 trigrams array where the questioning heart was located. Mysterious inscriptions were mixed in. This is a teleportation array? Mu Yu was surprised. Did Master know that something like this would happen and deliberately left this thing to guide us? Qingyan was also very excited. He never expected that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Everyone, stand by the teleportation array. Mu Yu was excited. He had already landed in the center of the teleportation array. Mysterious array patterns flowed out of his fingertips and merged with the questioning heart's array pattern. He already knew how to activate the teleportation array. The white-bearded old man is really smart, little Shuai exclaimed. After everyone stood in the teleportation array, Mu Yu immediately activated the array pattern. The array pattern quickly rotated and quickly took them away from the spatial barrier. When they reappeared, whether it was Mu Yu, Qingyan, Luo Shang, Xiangnan, or Tian Ran, they were all stunned. Luo Chun Cliff. They were actually teleported to Luo Chun Cliff of Luo Chun Mountain by the questioning heart. No one expected that the questioning heart would teleport them to Luo Chun Mountain. The Luo Chun Cliff that they were familiar with actually hid such an unknown secret. What is this place? Wanwan curiously looked at the banyan tree that was full of vitality at Luo Chun Cliff. Our home. Qingyan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. This was the place where they came from and also their roots. When they were young, they cultivated here. At night, They would look at the night sky at Luo Chun Cliff and listen to their master talk about the cultivation world. Everyone was carefree, and without worldly disputes, they lived a life of idyllic. Now things were still the same, but people were different. The chick had already grown into an eagle and became the king of the sky. But in their hearts, there was a flaw. This is your Luo Chan sect. Shimin Wuji also felt it was quite strange. Not only him, the others were also the first to visit the Luo Chan sect. They also wanted to know what the legendary place where a true god lived was like. Jianing Chun Feng was a god that no one could match, so the place where a true god lived in seclusion must be extraordinary. However, when they left Luo Chan Cliff and saw a few simple and crude houses, they were also startled. This was simply not what a sect should look like. This place was extremely shabby. There were no bejeweled palaces, jade stairs, or anything that should have been there. But Mu Yu and the other three Marshall brothers silently opened their respective doors. Looking at the cobwebs and dust everywhere, the past events flashed through their minds. Their hearts were unexpectedly unable to calm down. You all should find a place to rest. Mu Yu sat on the threshold of his door. With a wave of his hand, several wooden chairs and tables appeared in front of Shimin Wuji and the others. Shimin Wuji and the others didn't disturb these four Marshall brothers. Rather, they tactfully went to the side to cultivate. Tian Ran also sat on the threshold. She was like a little girl from a farmer's family. She wasn't restrained at all. She had also lived here for a year. She had lived with her father and Mu Yu for a year. Xiao Shui glanced at Mu Yu and Tian Ran. She didn't say anything and went to the side to rest. Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Xiang Nen leaned on the door of their own room. They were silent. Even though Luo Shang had left Luo Chun sect for many years, Lan Ling had always been stubbornly cleaning his room for him. She was looking forward to his return. But now even Lan Ling wasn't here. Everything was covered with dust. At a certain moment, the four Marshall brothers suddenly raised their head. Their eyes quietly met. Qingyan's eyes were filled with guilt and helplessness. He looked at his three Marshall brothers. His heart was filled with complex feelings. From a moment his Marshall brothers had decided to walk their own path, Qingyan had always wanted to find his Marshall brothers. He wanted to assume the responsibility of a big Marshall brother. When his master wasn't here, he wanted to protect everyone in this family. He wanted to make sure that this family was intact. But the number of times everyone in this family returned home was becoming less and less. They also seemed to be gradually drifting apart from each other. You didn't want to return home. Now you have returned home, Qingyan said softly. Chapter 11:29. The wind at Luochun Cliff rustled the leaves and rubbed the stone slabs on the cliff's edge. The smooth stone slabs left behind countless memories. Xiao Shui sat on the swing on the banyan tree, swinging back and forth happily. In order not to break the swing, Dummy had shrunk itself to be as small as Xiao Shui. The two giggled as they sat on the swing. The swing used to belong exclusively to Kong Kong and Meow Meow. They liked to sit on the swing and listen to their master tell them stories at night. Now, however, the two naughty kids were nowhere to be found, so the swing became Xiao Shui and Dummy's exclusive property. Mu Yu sat on the banyan tree, as usual, gazing into the distance. Qingyan sat on the stone slabs under the banyan tree, his feet sticking out of the cliff. Xiangnan lay on the stone slabs, staring blankly into the sky. Luo Shang leaned against the banyan tree trunk, staring at the clouds in the distance, deep in thought. After a long time, Qingyan broke the silence. There's no need to hide it from me anymore. What are you going to do next? Qingyan sighed softly. Luo Shang and Xiang Nen both had their own plans. They wanted to change the world in their own way. All these years, Qingyan had been searching for his junior brother, hoping to stop him from acting recklessly. However, when it came time to face his junior brother, he felt conflicted. Xiang Nan said, "We'll establish a country and control the humans. We'll let them live according to my wishes. Those who don't obey will be killed." Xiang Nan's voice was calm, but there was a hint of determination in it. Only those who believe in you can live. Some people are destined to die. Luo Shang's words were concise. Their words were jarring to Qing Yin's ears. Whether it was Luo Shang or Xiang Nan, their decisions were not what Qing Yin wanted to see. Mu Yu was silent for a long time. Then, he said, "I will strip away the consciousness of those who are selfish and cowardly." Qing Yin was stunned. He jerked his head up and stared at Mu Yu in disbelief. "I thought you already went home." He never thought that Mu Yu would say something so extreme. Mu Yu calmly said, "I just can't forgive those who betrayed Master. Master gave them life, but they slandered Master in every possible way. Since they don't cherish their lives, then they don't need to live anymore." With Mu Yu's attainments in array techniques, he could create a powerful divine soul array, just like his master, and control everyone. Everyone's life and death would only require a single thought from him. With Mu Yu's current strength, he could definitely do this. Qing Yin stared fixedly at Mu Yu. He had always thought that Mu Yu was on his side and would work with him to persuade Luo Shang and Xiang Nan to let the four brothers return home safely. But now that everyone was sitting down to talk, Mu Yu had changed his mind and was on Luo Shang and Xiang Nan's side. Qing Yin's expression tensed up slightly. "What you're doing is wrong. You should be the person who loves life the most. You once told me that everyone has a reason to live and that no one should take another's life away. Have you forgotten?" After a moment of silence, Mu Yu slowly replied, "That was in the past. I didn't know that human nature could be so filthy. I can't forgive those who have lost their principles, just like how I can't forgive those people in Dongsha City who were slaughtered by me." Dongsha City was a pain in Mu Yu's heart that he would never be able to erase. He wanted to be a good person, but he could not find a reason to be one. Qing Yin's breathing became heavier as his chest heaved up and down. He did not understand Mu Yu's choice. He said, "Why have you become so extreme as well? Anyone with strength would want to establish their own sect and kingdom so that everyone can live by the rules they set. I just want everyone to live by the rules. I don't want the same tragedy to happen to my family," Mu Yu said. Establishing a sect and setting up sect rules was what most sects did. Once they violated the sect rules, they would be severely punished. Mu Yu wanted to create a sect based on the entire third heaven. Qing Yin raised his voice. "You will never be able to kill all those people. Human reproduction is endless. After you kill a coward, another selfish person will be born." Mu Yu still said calmly, "In this world, the good people will always be hurt while the bad people run rampant. What I want to do is to rely on my own ability to make the good people live better, and the bad people can't hurt the good people." It was just like how he wanted to protect the old city lord of Dongsha City, He Jinglong, and Xian Zhengtang's family. He wanted these people to live, not the shameless people who killed the old city lord and Xian Zhengtang's family. When he stepped into the great ascension stage, he had the confidence to set new rules for this world. "So the three of you are essentially the same?" Qing Yin gritted his teeth. Luo Shang and Xiang Nan looked at each other and then looked at Mu Yu. The two of them had always thought that Mu Yu's plan was essentially the same as Qing Yin's, but Mu Yu had already lost his original intention. Luo Shang looked at Qing Yin and asked, "Senior brother, why do you believe in humans? When they scolded Master and attacked us, didn't you resent them?" Qing Yin clenched his fists. "I don't believe in humans. I want to kill anyone who scolds Master. But I have to believe in Master. Master believes in humans. He wants to protect this world, so I have to fulfill Master's beliefs." "You don't have to force yourself," Xiang Nan said slowly. Qing Yin suddenly stood up and stared at Xiang Nan. He said angrily, "I have to do this because I am the eldest senior brother. I have to share Master's worries and be responsible for you. I am the eldest senior brother. It is my duty." Qing Yin was almost roaring. It was as if there was a volcano hidden in his heart. He had suppressed it for so many years and had never told anyone. No one knew what he was really thinking. He did not trust humans, but he remembered his identity and had to bear his responsibilities. Therefore, he forced himself to believe in humans and discover the good in them. He had always told himself that he was the eldest senior brother and that he had to protect humans like Master. Even though there were many times when he wanted to destroy this world and destroy those treacherous people, but he forced himself to hold it in. because he was the eldest senior brother. Mu Yu and the other two did not speak. This was the first time they had seen Chengyan angry. In the past, Chengyan had always been gentle and elegant. He was kind and responsible. He took on the responsibilities of a senior brother and worked hard to protect the family of Luochen Mountain. He had never lost his temper. Chengyan was also very confused. The more he wanted to protect humans, the more disappointed he was in their actions. He was also suffering in his heart. He hoped that he could be like Xiangnan and Luo Shang and walk his own path according to his own ideas. He wanted to kill those people who deserved to die and conquer this world with brute force. But he could not. He constantly told himself that what he was doing was wrong. Even though he did not know what was wrong, his master believed that what he was doing was wrong. He believed in his master, so he had to force himself to believe that what he was doing was wrong. He could not allow himself to lose control, because he knew that if he lost his principles, he would not be able to return to Luochen Mountain. No one said anything. Only Chengyan knew how much pressure he was carrying in his heart. Living a life of oppression was worse than death. Chengyan buried all of this deep in his heart. He was a strong-willed person. He silently endured his junior brother's confusion and his own confusion, doing things that even he did not understand. The three words, eldest senior brother, were like a mountain that pressed down on his back, making it hard for him to breathe. But he could not abandon this mountain, nor did he ever think of abandoning it. He wanted to carry this mountain until the end, until his three junior brothers returned home. Little Shuai and Dummy also quieted down and stopped making noise. They looked at their four senior brothers, not knowing what to do. "I'm sorry, senior brother. I want to walk my own path." Xiangnan stood up from the stone slab and looked deeply at Chengyan, then at Mu Yu and Luo Shang. He left Luochen Mountain without looking back and headed for the sky. "Senior brother, Master told us to do things with a clear conscience. I will always remember Master's words." Luo Shang also slowly stepped out of Luochen Mountain. "I won't allow anyone who slandered Master to live." His figure turned into a streak of fiery light and flew towards the south. Chengyan clenched his fists as he watched Luo Shang and Xiangnan leave. His entire body trembled and his lips turned white from biting them. He could not convince his two junior brothers, nor could he stop them from leaving. He did not want to do anything to his junior brothers. Even if he captured Luo Shang and Xiangnan, it would be completely useless. When their hearts did not belong here, nothing could help them. The wind on Luochen Mountain grew stronger and stronger, causing Chengyan's clothes to flutter noisily. "Are you leaving?" Chengyan asked in a hoarse voice. Mu Yu lay on the treetop and watched the banyan trees' leaves grow slightly. Life flowed in an inexplicable way, thriving and thriving. "Senior brother, none of us did anything wrong. Now that we have the power to change the world, we want to change the world. Every sect has its own rules, and every country has its own system. We just want to be the ones to establish the rules." Mu Yu was still lying on the banyan tree. The sun shone through the banyan tree and sprinkled on her body. It was like a ground full of gold, making people feel relaxed and happy. He loved life, but he loved his family even more. He also loved those who were truly good. However, good people with integrity and responsibility would always be ostracized and persecuted in this world. He wanted to protect those people with his own strength and change the fact that good people don't live long. He had a life and death moment, and he had a perfect soul formation. He could establish his own rules. Therefore, he would leave this place. "I'm going to the Danding sect." Mu Yu stood up and jumped under the tree. Xiao Shuai scratched his head and walked over to hug Chengyan. However, he did not know what to say to comfort him. Instead, he jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder. Dummy also followed Xiao Shuai's example and hugged Chengyan. Mu Yu silently turned and left Luochen Cliff. He wanted to find Xiao Shui and Tian Ran and leave with them. The wind on Luochen Cliff was like a knife cutting Chengyan's body. The fallen leaves swayed in the wind, and the banyan tree's leaves rustled. A dead leaf fluttered and landed on Chengyan's shoulder. Chengyan's body looked very lonely. His whole body seemed to be crushed by the leaves, and he looked very frail in the wind. However, Chengyan slowly straightened his back. I won't give up, Chung Yin said. I'm the eldest senior brother. Chapter 11:30. Muyu sat on the flying sword and flew in the air, looking into the distance blankly. Was it right or wrong for him to do so? He asked himself a lot of times. However, he didn't like those selfish self-cultivators. What was the meaning of those people's lives? Just like those people in Eastern Sand City, they could denounce the old city lord, denounce Xian Zhengtang's family, and denounce Muyu in order to survive. They could even hand the others over to the Yumeng demon clan in exchange for a chance at survival. There were too many such people in the cultivation world. He couldn't help Qingyan and save everyone with a clear conscience. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran sat behind Muyu. They vaguely knew what had happened on Luochen Cliff. Luo Shang and Xiang then left without saying goodbye. Muyu called them with a heavy heart and didn't explain the situation. The others were still at Luochen Mountain. They might follow Qingyan or leave. Muyu didn't care about them. Dummy wanted to play with Xiao Shui, so he followed behind. They quickly left Mayun Mountain Range and headed in the direction of the Elixir Tripod sect. The closest city to Mayun Mountain Range was Lanshi City. Muyu turned around and headed in the direction of Lanshi City. He needed to find out about the current movements of the Third Palace. When he was about to reach Lanshi City, he was suddenly shocked. At this moment, Lanshi City was filled with a monstrous, murderous aura. In the sky above the city, there were many ugly creatures with wings patrolling. In the city, dozens of people were tied by chains around their necks. They were being whipped by flesh-winged and horned monsters as they cried out in pain. Every time a black whip fell, those people would cry out in heart-wrenching pain. Black gas would emerge from their bodies. The flesh-winged and horned monsters waved their whips around excitedly and swallowed the black gas. Have the mutated tribes really invaded the third heaven? Muyu looked at Lanshi City and had a bad premonition. Wait for me here. I'll go into the city and check it out. After Muyu finished speaking, he disappeared from where he was. The invisibility formation covered his body and covered his aura. When he reappeared, he was already on the streets of Lanshi City. At this moment, the streets of Misty Breath City were filled with many people. These people were lined up with pale faces, submissive and terrified. Beside them stood many strange-looking people of other races. At this moment, they were waving their long whips and whipping these people who were lining up. Hurry up! A flesh-winged and horned monster cackled. Muyu went to the front of the line without saying a word. Then, he saw a spacious courtyard. The courtyard was filled with hundreds of flesh-winged and horned monsters. They were all sitting in front of the tables as if they were having a meal. The humans in the line walked to the flesh-winged and horned monsters one by one and knelt in front of them. They stretched out their hands. The flesh-winged and horned monsters laughed wildly and rudely pulled these people's hands and sucked their blood. Everyone who had their blood sucked was in great pain. Their faces were filled with panic, but no one resisted. This was because there were 4 tribulation passing stage flesh-winged and horned monsters beside them. They were emitting a powerful pressure that made these humans with low cultivations tremble. They didn't have the slightest determination to resist. As for the flesh-winged and horned monsters that were sucking blood, their cultivations were very low. The highest was only at the nascent soul stage. Obviously, they were newborns of the flesh-winged and horned monsters that were here to suck blood to recover their vitality. A frail-looking old man knelt in front of a flesh-winged and horned monster. He was so thin that he was only skin and bones, but he still had to offer his blood. Blood kept flowing out of his hands. He was pale and weak and fell to the ground. That's enough. Don't suck all their blood. One dead beast is one less beast. We have to raise the humans in the third heaven in captivity. Only then will we have an endless supply of blood in the future. A spirit-severing stage, flesh-winged, and horned monster walked over and took the fainted little old man's hand out of the red flesh-winged and horned monster's mouth. There were dozens of densely packed teeth marks on the little old man's hand. Some of the teeth marks had even festered and inflamed. It was a terrible sight. Obviously, this was not the first time the flesh-winged and horned monster had sucked his blood like this. The flesh-winged and horned monster looked at the half-dead old man, kicked him, and then said, "This old beast can't live anymore. Send him to the soul race and see if his soul can still be sucked." Yes. Two cultivators came out from the corner, trembling with fear. They looked at the flesh-winged and horned monster in fear and quickly dragged the half-dead old man away. A transcending calamity stage monster with fleshy wings and horns scolded loudly, "You juniors, listen to me. The third celestial layer humans are now very precious breeding grounds. When you eat, you have to control the amount. If you die, there won't be so much blood for you to consume in the future. After all, it's not just the U clan that came to the third celestial layer, understand? The food is limited." Many flesh-winged and horned monsters hurriedly responded, but some flesh-winged and horned monsters still took the opportunity to suck a few more mouthfuls. Obviously, they were not so obedient. Muyu looked at these humans who were used as a blood source by the flesh-winged and horned monsters like animals, and an inexplicable anger emerged in his heart. The purpose of the alien race's attack on the third heaven was actually this. The humans who were forced to be sacrificed were all mortals. These people had no cultivation and were powerless in the face of the powerful Yu clan. Just as he was about to make a move, Xiangnan suddenly appeared beside him and said indifferently, "Wait a minute. We need to confirm the situation. Come with us." Luo Shang also appeared beside Muyu. He pulled Muyu and disappeared from the courtyard. They appeared in a dark room. The room was very big, and it was like a slaughterhouse. There were corpses everywhere, piled up in a disorderly manner and emitting a foul smell. There were also several people lying on the ground on the verge of death, only breathing in and out. What the hell happened? Muyu saw that the old man who had been sentenced to death just now was also lying in the corner, no different from a dead person. Most of the people here were old, weak, sick, and disabled. Their faces were ashen, and their arms were full of teeth marks. Their wounds were white, and they were all skin and bones. The blood in their bodies had dried up. Xiangnan said slowly, "We only arrived 4 hours earlier than you. It seems like we underestimated this conspiracy." Muyu walked to the side of the old man from before. He checked his injuries, and his heart sank. The old man's life force was gradually fading away, but his soul was still firmly imprisoned in his body. There was a soul race formation in this room to ensure that the souls of these mortals would not leave their bodies. "We have only been in the ancient battlefield for a few days, but a year has passed in the third heaven," Luo Shang said slowly. "A year?" Muyu was slightly stunned. They had actually left the third heaven for a year? He scanned the people here. The people lying on the ground on the verge of death were mainly old people, and there were also thin and weak children. An old woman was unconscious, but she was holding a 10-year-old boy in her arms. The boy was lifeless. Muyu was enraged. "I'm going to kill these strange races," Xiangnan said. "It's easy to kill these aliens, but we have to consider whether the human race is worth saving." "What do you mean?" Muyu asked. "Do you know what the saddest thing about the human race is? They are helping the aliens oppress their own kind. Many people have already chosen to join the Holy Sage Group in order to survive. The cultivators of the Holy Sage Group are helping the aliens to filter out their own kind in order to survive," Luo Shang said as he left the room. Their current cultivation was extremely powerful. With their own domains, other than those at the Great Ascension stage, no one could see their figures. The three of them walked along the street, past the queuing mortals, and arrived at the west side of the city. There was a group of cultivators wearing purple clothes here. These cultivators looked arrogant and despotic as they sat in the plaza and scolded the mortals. Every mortal was terrified. They walked to a rock one by one and pressed their hands on it. The rock would emit different rays of light according to their physiques. Then, they would be assigned to different teams. Many mortals looked at the light of the rock in front of them eagerly. When the rock lit up with purple light, they would be very excited. When the rock lit up with red light, their faces would turn pale. 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, blue, and purple. This rock has been set up with a formation. It can measure the physical condition of mortals to prevent mortals from sacrificing too much blood and dying directly. The U clan treats the human race as beasts and provides blood, but they will not kill the human race directly. When the purple light is lit up, it means that these people don't have to sacrifice for 7 days. The blue ones can rest for 6 days, and the red ones can't rest. They have to continue sacrificing blood tomorrow. Xiangnan stared at the dozen or so spirit-severing stage cultivators who were giving orders there. They were also human beings, but they were helping the alien race to trample on their own compatriots. Xiangnan continued. Cultivators who join the sage group must be at least at the divinity-severing stage. Those who are not at the divinity-severing stage can only become sacrifices. Those who are at the divinity-severing stage can work for the aliens to avoid becoming sacrifices themselves. Do you want to save them? Xiangnan left with Mu Yu and walked to the east of the city. There were no mortals here, only cultivators. There were about a few hundred people in the out-of-body stage. They were all sitting cross-legged on the ground, cultivating desperately. Cultivators had also become sacrifices for the aliens. They were responsible for supplying blood to the aliens above the body integration stage. The hierarchy was very strict, and they managed everything in an orderly manner. Not long after they arrived, a severed soul stage aura suddenly erupted from the out-of-body stage crowd. One of the out-of-body stage cultivators broke through to the severed soul stage. I broke through. I can join the Holy Sage group. I beg you, please let me join the Holy Sage group. It was a middle-aged man with a weathered face. He stood up excitedly and ran to the front of a monster with fleshy wings and horns. He knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing. My lord, please accept me as your servant. I have reached the spirit-severing stage. Chapter 11:31. The flesh-winged horned monster looked contemptuously at the middle-aged man kneeling in front of it and said with a lazy smile, Since you are already at the spirit-severing stage, then you will supervise the raising of the mortals in the 2nd district. Remember, you must take good care of your own livestock. If there is a mistake, such as one animal missing, then you will replace it. Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord. The middle-aged man kowtowed ecstatically. In order to show his sincerity to the flesh-winged horned monster, his forehead even bled. But the flesh-winged horned monster didn't care about this at all. It kicked him away and said contemptuously, Go and raise them well. Yes, yes. The middle-aged man got up from the ground awkwardly, but he was not angry at all. When he turned around, he was already very excited. He looked at the out-of-body stage self-cultivators who were still cultivating and laughed proudly. The other out-of-body stage self-cultivators also looked at him enviously, looking at the man who had already gotten rid of his identity as a sacrifice. Mu Yu and the other two silently followed the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man ran to the mortal district in the west of the city and found a member of the U clan who was responsible for distributing purple clothes. This flesh-winged horned monster only had the cultivation of the nascent soul stage. But the middle-aged man still knelt respectfully in front of him and said, My lord, I am a slave who has just joined the Holy Monarch group. I am here to ask for clothes. The nascent soul stage, flesh-winged, horned monster sneered, threw a piece of clothes in front of him, and spat on the clothes, saying, The 34 mortals in the 13th column of the 2nd district will be handed over to you. Last time, a mortal committed suicide here. So we abolished the manager and let him be replaced by a mortal. You have to supervise them well. If there is any mistake, you will be responsible. Yes, yes, I understand. The middle-aged man excitedly picked up the purple clothes. Regardless of the thick phlegm on it, he directly put on the clothes and then walked to a courtyard. The outside of each courtyard was divided into areas. He found the courtyard of the 13th column of the 2nd district, opened the door, and walked in. Inside was a group of sallow and emaciated mortals, trembling in the corner. When they saw the middle-aged man, they quickly knelt down in awe. They had already been frightened by the self-cultivators. To these mortals, the self-cultivators were high and mighty adults. Once they disobeyed their commands, the self-cultivators would ruthlessly punish them in order to win the favor of the alien race. The middle-aged man's flattering expression towards the flesh-winged horned monster had become extremely arrogant. He coldly scolded, "All of you line and kneel. I am a new chief of your livestock. My name is Duan Hu. If you dare to disobey me, I will make you wish you were dead." The new animal husbandry head, named Duan Hu, began to examine their physiques one by one and recorded it on a piece of paper. Soon after, he began to drive these mortals to start cooking. There's always an abundance of food here because there were cultivators who were responsible for catching demonic beasts to come back and feed the mortals. Mu Yu and Xiang then looked at these courtyards from the air. There were dozens of mortals in each of these courtyards, each under the care of a severed soul stage cultivator. Mu Yu even saw a severed soul stage cultivator beating a mortal who was trying to commit suicide. However, every time the mortal was about to be beaten to death, the cultivator would save him with medicine. This repeated punishment made the mortal suffer a life worse than death. It was impossible for mortals to commit suicide in front of a severed soul stage cultivator. Many mortals had dull eyes and had become walking corpses. The flesh-winged horned monsters were undoubtedly most satisfied with sacrifices that had lost their lives and hope. This was because such sacrifices would not resist or try to escape. I don't understand. Are these the people Qingyan wants to save? Luo Shang looked at the animal husbandry masters who raised the mortals. In order to survive, these cultivators knelt before the flesh-winged horned beasts and groveled. But in front of their own kind, they were arrogant and despotic. They were accomplices to the evildoers and framed their own kind on behalf of the aliens. What was the point of saving such a human race? Mu Yu fell into silence. He did not know how to answer this question. Human nature was always so ugly. The nature of a self-cultivator was fully revealed at this moment. Those out-of-body stage cultivators, in order to get rid of the status of sacrificial offerings forever and not have their blood sucked away, had been training with all their might. The purpose of their training was not to fight against the aliens, but to please the aliens and exploit their own kind so that they could live on. I have long seen through the lowliness of human nature, Mu Yu said softly. He had long understood the weakness of human beings. In the academy in the Mayan mountain range, Deacon Sun used his remaining strength to kill those arrogant and domineering self-cultivators so that the gray disciples would not be bullied by the self-cultivators. In the end, he was betrayed by a gray disciple and almost lost his life. This was because the gray disciple wanted to be a self-cultivator who could bully others, not a person who was bullied. In the eastern Sand City, in order to save their own lives, the cultivators had raged and wanted to hand Mu Yu over to the Yuming Devil clan. They had even killed Xian Zhengtong's family and the old city lord. From a very long time ago, Mu Yu's naive idea of helping the human race began to change. And now, the same scene appeared again. However, this time, those self-cultivators who desperately wanted to join the sage group did it to please the aliens. Their actions were even more hateful than the gray disciple who betrayed Deacon Sun. Mist Breath City was divided into hundreds of districts by the Yu clan. They called these districts the pigsty. Regardless of whether they were mortals or self-cultivators, they were all treated as livestock and were specially used for sucking their blood. Mortal District 3, Column 8. A 15-year-old youth was curled up on a pile of ragged grass in the corner. His small arms were full of teeth marks. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but his eyes were filled with hatred and determination. "Father, mother, if I can survive, I will definitely avenge you." The youth's name was Jiang Zhongxian. Yesterday, his parents' blood was sucked by the flesh-winged, horned monsters for the last time. After that, they never stood up again and were dragged away by those self-cultivators. He didn't know where his parents went. He desperately wailed, wanting his parents to return to his side, but all he got in return was a vicious beating. He was only a mortal. He thought that an immortal master could save them from this disaster, but the so-called immortal master was trying his best to curry favor with those ugly creatures. The 15-year-old Jiang Zhengxian clenched his fists. If I were an immortal master, even if I die, I would drag a few monsters down with me. He really wanted to die, but he couldn't because the spirit-severing stage self-cultivator standing in the courtyard wouldn't give him the chance to die. Even if he bit his tongue to commit suicide, he would be saved by the self-cultivator's chief animal husbandry. In the end, he would only become a mute for nothing. The immortal master's name was Yuan Lai. He had a bad temper and really treated these mortals as livestock. He glanced at these mortals and kicked a pile of food in front of them. He scolded, "Hurry up and eat. If anyone dares to not eat, I will teach you a lesson." The people with backbone wanted to go on a hunger strike, but as the chief animal husbandry, Yuan Lai would force the food down their throats to prevent them from dying. A spirit-severing stage self-cultivator was more than enough to supervise the life and death of a few mortals. Bang! The door was kicked open and a flesh-winged horned monster walked in. The originally ferocious Yuan Lai immediately put on a flattering smile and respectfully knelt on the ground, saying, "Greetings, sir. I'm here to pick one or two food for dinner tonight." The red flesh-winged horned monster walked over and glanced at the mortals trembling in the corner. Yuan Lai immediately stood up and sternly roared at the mortals, "All of you, come here and kneel to greet my lord. If anyone dares to slow down, I will see." Other than the 15-year-old Jiang Zhengxian, the other mortals all trembled and knelt down. Jiang Zhengxian never knelt of his own accord. Every time he was beaten to kneel, he would be beaten to the point of kneeling, but he never knelt of his own accord. When Yuan Lai saw Jiang Zhengxian, his heart was filled with anger again. He walked over and kicked the 15-year-old boy. He angrily shouted, "You're itching for a beating again?" Jiang Zhengxian was kicked to the ground. His face was already bruised and swollen, but he only spat on Yuan Lai. He knew Yuan Lai didn't dare to kill him. He despised this so-called self-cultivator from the bottom of his heart. "I will not kneel to a disgusting monster," Jiang Zhengxian stubbornly said. Yuan Lai lifted Jiang Zhengxian with one hand and kicked the back of Jiang Zhengxian's knee, pressing him to the ground. He smiled apologetically at the flesh-winged horned monster and said, "My lord, this guy is too stubborn. He won't submit at all. Please don't blame him. He has already knelt." The flesh-winged horned monster laughed and stepped on Jiang Zhengxian's face. "Stubborn? The blood of a stubborn person must be delicious. Today's extra meal is you." Jiang Zhengxian's lips were bruised, but he still didn't submit. He only stared at the flesh-winged horned monster with hatred. "One day, the true God will return and kill all of you disgusting monsters." Jiang Zhengxian angrily shouted, "Shut up. What is a true God in front of my great lord? Do you want to die?" Yuan Lai kicked Jiang Zhengxian again. Jiang Zhengxian clenched his fists. He really wanted to resist, to rush up and kill someone like Yuan Lai, but he couldn't. He didn't have the ability. He hated himself for being useless, and he hated Yuan Lai for being a villain. The flesh-winged horned monster seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He said, The true God has already died. He has already given up on you, third heaven humans. No one can save you. You can only be enslaved." His arrogant laughter spread throughout the courtyard. Yuan Lai also smiled apologetically at the side. "My lord is wise. To be able to serve my lord is this servant's fortune. The true God is no longer here, but there are still the true God's disciples. One day, they will return and kill all of you. They will also kill you, the human traitor." Jiang Zhengxian practically squeezed these words out from between his teeth. Yuan Lai sneered. "The true God's disciples? They have already been killed by my lord. You bunch of ignorant and stupid mortals. What are you still daydreaming about?" As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura swept out. Whoosh! Suddenly, a violent rumble came from the sky above Misty Breath City. A powerful whirlpool swept down from the sky, and a dazzling heavenly sword that was 10,000 feet long appeared. It illuminated the entire Misty Breath City and startled everyone. Under the sword light, Mu Yu's figure stood majestically, firm and upright. He was like a bright lamp in the dark night, allowing the people who were trembling under the feet of the Yu clansmen to see the light again. You still have to save him. Xiangnan looked at Mu Yu. I have long seen through the lowliness of human nature, but I am still human. Chapter 1132. Tens of thousands of sword chi streaked across the sky, causing the entire sky to tremble. The sky seemed to revolve around this sword chi. As the sword slashed down, it instantly turned into tens of thousands of tiny sword chi, which densely dove in a mist-breath city. The strongest flesh-winged horned monsters in the entire Lan Shi city were only at the tribulation stage. They were still proudly treating humans as livestock, but in the next moment, all the flesh-winged horned monsters were stunned. Swish! 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 The sword energy entered Lan Shi city and pierced through all the flesh-winged horned monsters. The sword pierced through their chests and forcefully lifted their bodies into the sky. All the flesh-winged horned monsters were nailed in midair by the flying sword. Jiang Zhengxian stared blankly at the person in the sky. A moment ago, he was still being stepped on by the flesh-winged horned monsters, but in the next moment, the ugly creature that was stepping on him was pierced through by the sword energy and lifted into midair. As for Yuan Lai, who was originally flattering him, he was so frightened that his face turned ashen. He sat paralyzed on the ground, not knowing what to do. That person and that sword were like an eternal picture that was deeply engraved in Jiang Zhengxian's mind. He believed that the person in the sky was someone that everyone in the cultivation world knew. That was the true God's disciple, Mu Yu. Boiling hot tears once again flowed out of his eyes. Jiang Zhengxian never thought that he would actually wait for such a day. The true God's disciple held a heavenly sword and slashed down, capturing all the ugly invaders. That sword made his blood boil. He also wanted to wield a long sword and sweep across the world, killing all the invaders and eliminating all the spineless humans. It's Mu Yu. It's the true God's disciple. He's back. He's here to save us. The enslaved humans in Lan Shi city seemed to have seen a ray of light in the endless night. Someone had come to save them. They no longer needed to be forced to donate blood as sacrifices every day and night. They were so excited that they knelt down on the ground, crying and kowtowing nonstop, begging Mu Yu to save them. However, the self-cultivators who had become livestock chiefs for the sake of survival were all stunned in place. As part of the human race, they had helped the alien race to oppress the human race. But now, the monster they had flattered had been destroyed by Mu Yu in the blink of an eye. They couldn't feel any excitement, only deep fear. Mu Yu walked slowly in the void. Every time he took a step, the runes under his feet would emerge. They were like ropes that tied up all the cultivators who were acting as herds. I've never been afraid to think of the human race in the worst way, because that's the nature of the human race. But people like you who are greedy and afraid of death, who betray your own race for glory and harm your own kind, make me feel disgusted. Compared to the outsiders, you deserve to die even more. Mu Yu looked at the 300 or so-called livestock chiefs with cold killing intent. These people had the cultivation of the spirit-severing stage, but they were like pitiful worms without any backbone. Instead, they wagged their tails and begged the Yu clan for mercy in order to survive. Those livestock chiefs had already knelt down in the air and cried miserably, "Lord Mu Yu, please spare our lives. We were forced to do this. We had no choice. We just wanted to survive. Lord Mu Yu, please spare our lives." The spirit-severing stage livestock chiefs cried and begged for mercy. In order to survive, they knelt at the feet of the outsiders. Now, in order to survive, they knelt at the feet of Mu Yu. Mu Yu looked at these people with pity. He wouldn't let these people go just because of the so-called survival. When facing the outsiders, in order to survive, they would harm their own kind. This kind of people was already intolerable. Wait, don't kill them. Not all livestock chiefs are bad. Jiang Zhengxian shouted desperately in the crowd. His voice was drowned out by the cries of the mortals who were crying tears of joy. He desperately squeezed forward in the direction of Mu Yu, but the excited crowd filled the entire street. He couldn't squeeze through and was pushed to the corner. Not all livestock chiefs are bad. Jiang Zhengxian shouted with all his might, but no one listened to him. Everyone was cheering for the survival of the disaster. They were all shouting for the execution of those livestock chiefs and those flesh-winged horn monsters. Not all animal husbandry chiefs are bad. Jiang Zhengxian gritted his teeth and gradually lowered his head. He knew that Muyu couldn't hear these words, but he still wanted to try and say what was in his heart. But a powerful formation suddenly wrapped around him and swept him into the air, landing in front of Muyu. Why do you think so? Muyu looked at the 15-year-old youth in front of him. Jiang Zhengxian looked at Muyu with wild joy. It's you, it's really you. You heard me. Why did you say that not all livestock chiefs are bad? Muyu asked. Some immortal masters are very good. They just want to protect us, Jiang Zhengxian said carefully. Yuan Lai, who was responsible for watching over Jiang Zhengxian, heard Jiang Zhengxian's words and immediately shouted, That's right, that's right. I want to protect them. I only became livestock chief because I wanted to protect them. Bah, you're not. You're so shameless, Jiang Zhengxian said angrily. After a while, he said, Last time, the immortal master who watched over us, Immortal Master Fei Ming, wanted to protect us. He always kept his distance from those monsters. He treated us extremely well and never hit or scolded us. But later on, he was accidentally discovered by those monsters. Those monsters killed him. Jiang Zhengxian's face was filled with grief and indignation. The 300-plus livestock chiefs began to kowtow and beg for mercy. They all swore that they had never mistreated those mortals. Duan Hu, who had just been promoted to livestock chief, also loudly begged for mercy. He said that he had the same goal as Taoist Fei Ming. However, there were still a few dozen livestock chiefs who silently looked at Muyu. They didn't beg for mercy. Instead, they just knelt there. Their eyes were filled with emotion, but they didn't say anything. Whether or not these so-called livestock chiefs deserve to die, I will find out. Muyu's divine soul array flashed under her feet, enveloping all the animal husbandry chiefs, controlling them and probing their memories. Those who begged for mercy were cowards who were willing to harm their own kind. As for those who truly wanted to protect the mortals, not a single one of them was as shameless as Yuan Lai and the others. Damn it, I won't let a single one of you go. Muyu coldly stared at the 271 livestock chiefs. With just a thought, all of them turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. Even their souls were directly shattered by Muyu. As for the remaining 93 animal husbandry chiefs, they were cultivators who truly wanted to protect the mortals at a time like this. They had never harmed the mortals and used their status as animal husbandry chiefs to ensure that the mortals could live on peacefully. Muyu would only save those who truly deserved to live. The 93 self-cultivators were horrified to see the animal husbandry elders around them turn into ashes one by one. They also felt a burst of trembling. They didn't understand how Muyu knew, but they also knew that they had just walked through the gates of hell. You all made the right choice. Muyu released his control over the 93 cultivators and slowly said, As for whether you want revenge or not, you can do whatever you want with these monsters. I have crippled their cultivation. They're only pitiful worms without the ability to jump around. Swoosh, swoosh, swish. More than 1,000 flesh-winged horn monsters from Mist Breath City fell into the crowd and were ruthlessly nailed to the ground by the sword aura. All of the mortals watched in horror as the ferocious flesh-winged horned monsters, who had been flaunting their prowess for the past year, fell to the ground like crippled dogs and were on their last breaths. Muyu's methods were beyond everyone's imagination. He actually crippled these flesh-winged horned monsters. Those who had been sacrificed had long hated the flesh-winged horn monsters, but at this time, they did not know if the flesh-winged horn monsters would stand up and bite them back. A bold person rushed over and kicked the flesh-winged horn monster. The flesh-winged horn monster howled in pain. This time, everyone believed it and began to roar and pounce on the flesh-winged horn monsters. They vowed to tear these monsters to pieces and vent all the resentment of the past year. The entire city was in an uproar. Everyone wanted to tear the flesh-winged horned monsters to shreds. Pushing and shoving, the scene was chaotic. Even though the flesh-winged horned monsters had extraordinary bodies, under Mu Yu's suppression, they were no different from ordinary cattle and sheep. They were directly torn to shreds by the furious mortals. None of the monsters' souls escaped. Their souls were torn to shreds by the mortals under Mu Yu's array and turned into ashes. Mu Yu's gaze landed on the self-cultivators who were desperately cultivating in order to join the Sage Corps. His divine soul array poured out again and controlled all of these self-cultivators. With just a command, those self-cultivators who wanted to betray their compatriots and join the Sage Corps committed suicide by killing themselves. Mu Yu watched coldly as more than 3,000 self-cultivators committed suicide in front of him. His heart didn't waver at all. When they chose to sacrifice their lives for the other races, they were destined to end up like this. And the people Mu Yu wanted to kill were these people. There were only slightly more than 5,000 self-cultivators left in the entire Mist Breath City. These people were either unyielding or wanted to fight against the other races to the end. Even if they couldn't win, they didn't have any intention of giving in. Mu Yu's divine soul array was very powerful. He controlled these people and made them choose whether they had the right to live or not. I didn't expect you to directly let these people commit suicide, Luo Shang said. You can never kill all of these people. Even these mortals, if their strength allows them, they will also drag out an ignoble existence. The best way is to completely control them and let them live in our way, Xiangnan said slowly. Mortals have no choice when facing the other races, so I allowed them to live. Master said before that the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. As long as self-cultivators have a conscience, they should understand the importance of protecting their own race. They chose to be traitors, so I killed the traitors. Mu Yu said indifferently. Killing people was no longer difficult for him. Those people's lives have been completely devoured by his Mu Ling. Luo Shang shook his head. Even if they are mortals, I will never allow them to slander Master. I will kill anyone who dares to speak ill of Master. Xiangnan looked at the people in the city and said, I'm afraid that the entire third heaven has been occupied by the other races. If you kill all the other races in this city, the other races will definitely unite. When that time comes, when you leave, these people will still die. You can't protect them. Chapter 1133. There are thousands of big and small cities in the 3 continents, and Mist Breath City was only one of them. If the people in all the cities were enslaved like Mist Breath City, then how was he going to save and protect them one by one? In the past, the flesh-winged horn monsters could not withstand the sunlight of the third heaven. When we first met Akatsuki, Akatsuki was directly burned to ashes by the sun. It must be because his master had set up a powerful formation that was enough to suppress the actions of the aliens. But now, these flesh-winged horn monsters were acting without fear. Obviously, those restrictions had disappeared. Killing Bai Jie is the most direct way, Mu Yu said slowly. Bai Jie was the leader of these aliens. At this time, there must be many powerful aliens attacking the third heaven. Those people's strength was definitely at the Great Ascension stage. The strongest flesh-winged horn monster in Lanshi City's garrison was only at the tribulation passing stage. It was only because this was an inconspicuous border town. Xiang Nen was silent for a moment. He glanced at these crazy humans and said indifferently, I will go with you to kill the aliens. The lives of the humans in the third heaven belong to us. Those alien races have no right to touch them. Luo Shang looked at the rolling mountain range in the distance and said, there are no traces of the aliens in the Moyun mountain range. That is obviously their forbidden area. After they left Luochen Mountain, they passed by various small villages and cities, but there were no traces of the aliens. The Moyun mountain range, which was originally abandoned by the third continent, had become the safest stronghold. Xiang Nen shook his head and said, back then, the cultivators of the third continent chose to abandon the humans in the Moyun mountain range. Now, they are letting them enter the Moyun mountain range. Don't you think it's ridiculous? The cultivators of the third continent are generally higher in cultivation than the humans in the Moyun mountain range. Once they enter, they will only disturb the natives of the Moyun mountain range. The Moyun mountain range is the only place I don't want to control. I won't allow them to destroy it. Xiang Nan wanted to control the entire human tribe on the third continent, but he had never thought of touching the people in the Moyun mountain range. No matter what, the people there used to be closely related to his master. Muyu thought for a moment and said, "Then let them stay in the 100,000 mountains and not allow them to cross the 100,000 mountains. The 100,000 mountains are vast and can accommodate millions of people. I will set up a formation so that they can't interfere with the self-cultivators in the Moyun mountain range. Currently, the only city that can be saved is Lanshi City. As for the other cities, we'll talk about it in the future." All right. Xiangnan believed in Mu Yu's array formation skills. Mu Yu's voice immediately resounded throughout the entire Misty Breath City. "Everyone, listen up. I will arrange for all of you to hide in the Moyun mountain range to avoid this disaster. All the cultivators there will take good care of the mortals. When the alien race invades, if anyone dares to harm their own kind, I will definitely kill them." After he finished speaking, he set up a powerful teleportation formation in the center of Misty Breath City. At this moment, Xiao Shui and Tian Ran rushed over and understood what Muyu was going to do. Muyu asked Luo, Shang, and Dummy to wait here while he, Xiangnan, and Xiao Shui went to the 100,000 mountains of the Moyun mountain range. They chose a relatively flat mountain range in the 100,000 mountains. Muyu used his ability to control wood to build countless tree houses within a radius of 1,000 miles. Xiang then moved a few mountains away and built thousands of simple but sturdy mud houses on the ground. Xiao Shuem modified the underground water and diverted the river water to provide drinking water for the mortals. The ability of the three of them, Yu Meng, was fully displayed here. Muyu also used a powerful array to surround the entire residential area. Apart from experts in the crossing calamity stage, it was basically impossible to get out. After that, a teleportation array was set up in this mountain range, which was connected to the teleportation array in Lanshi City. They created such a big commotion here and even used the domain power of the great vehicle stage in order to build the houses. This had already alarmed Cheng Yin of the falling dust mountain. He looked at the tree houses and mud houses all over the place and couldn't help but be surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Saving people," Muyu said slowly. Xiangnan didn't say anything. He wasn't willing to admit this. Little Shuai told Muyu about what happened in Misty Breath City and the current situation in the cultivation world. Cheng Yin looked at Xiangnan and then at Muyu. His lips wriggled as if he was surprised and delighted by Xiangnan and Muyu's decision. However, he didn't say anything else. He just said, "I'll help you." Muyu nodded silently. He left the Moyun mountain range and returned to Misty Breath City. With his current cultivation, it only took him 15 minutes to go back and forth between the Moyun mountain range and Misty Breath City. At this time, the mortals in Misty Breath City had already quieted down. They were all eagerly waiting for Muyu's news. The moment Muyu reappeared, everyone became excited. Muyu had already fallen into the midst of those half-dead people whose blood had been sucked dry. They had been forcibly kept alive by the spirit array, created by the spirit array. Although their bodies had died, their souls were still imprisoned in their bodies. These corpses were piled up here. Next, they would be handed over to the soul rays to collect their souls. Their bodies and bones would also be handed over to the bone rays to squeeze out all the value of the humans. He hesitated again and again. His left eye lit up with a white glow. Endless vitality rolled out from his left eye and shone on these people. A powerful domain aura enveloped everyone. Resuscitation gradually came over with pale faces and badly mutilated arms. They looked at the person in the air in shock. "I survived. Where are those monsters?" Everyone got up from the ground and walked out. These hundreds of people came back from the dead, but they didn't understand what had happened. When they walked out of the room, they saw the mortals cheering on the street. They asked around and found out that those monsters had been killed by Muyu. They were instantly very excited. Muyu had only saved a few hundred people. The other dead people had been sent away long ago. He couldn't do anything about it. The young man named Jiang Zhengxian also ran toward his parents excitedly. His parents had been sucked dry yesterday and hadn't been sent away yet. They were lucky enough to survive. Leave this place through the teleportation array. Muyu had already activated the teleportation array. Under his pressure, no one dared to push. They all lined up obediently and left through the teleportation array. On the other side, Chengyan was waiting for them. We'll look for you after a while. Xiang Nan and Luo Shang left Mist Breath City without saying much. Muyu was still heading toward the Danding sect. He wanted to discuss things with Deadwood Daddy and see how to deal with the mutated races. They didn't bother with the other cities along the way. They had to think about the big picture and go back first. After all, they had unknowingly left Third Heaven for a year. It was very strange. When they returned to the Danding sect was completely sealed off by Deadwood. Anyone who wanted to enter had to go through Deadwood's confirmation. Even Muyu was sealed outside by the Cauldron of Ruin's powerful aura. He couldn't enter. Are we going to roar directly? I think Deadwood will notice us, little Shuai said. There's no need. Muyu shook his head. The Cauldron of Ruins had been returned to its owner. Muyu couldn't enter and leave freely. He landed at the entrance with Xiao Shui and Tian Ran and found that the entrance was heavily guarded. As soon as they landed, a few body integration stage self-cultivators rushed out and surrounded them. Stop! You mutated races are asking for death. The leader of the group, a middle-aged man, shouted. Little Shuai said, What's wrong with your eyes? Even a group of mortals can recognize Muyu. How can you not recognize him? The leader of the group said coldly, Umph. Don't think that you can get away with this by pretending to be Muyu. This is the 98th time that someone from the Outsiders has pretended to be Lord Muyu. If you dare to come again, don't blame us for being rude. The 98th time you've pretended to be me? Muyu was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that someone would pretend to be him. He asked curiously, Mutated races will pretend to be me? Cut the crap. You mutated races deserve to die 1,000 times. 8 trigrams annihilation. The middle-aged man shouted angrily. Golden runes lit up on his body. Not only him, but the other 7 body integration stage cultivators also emitted powerful auras. 8 trigrams runes lit up under their feet. The 8 of them stood in different positions of the 8 trigrams runes. The runes shone brightly, and the runes were like a flood. The power of the runes was close to that of a crossing tribulation stage cultivator. This array technique. Muyu was taken aback. The power of the array created by 8-form synthesis stage cultivators was much greater than that of a crossing calamity stage cultivator. Runes also appeared in his eyes. The runes of the 8 trigrams annihilation array technique were immediately reflected in his mind. It's steady and powerful. Defense and attack are combined into one point. This array technique must have been created by my father. Muyu couldn't help but admire it. Muyu was intrigued. He decided to try out the 8 trigrams annihilation array technique. He wanted to see how powerful this array technique was. In the face of a large-scale invasion by the mutated races, it was naturally good for cultivators to have a method to resist them. The 8-body integration stage cultivators had already surrounded Muyu. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran had already retreated. There was no need for them to intervene in this matter. Muyu stood in the center of the 8 trigrams annihilation array technique. Golden tigers surged out from the bodies of the other 8-body integration stage cultivators. The tigers roared and bit toward Muyu. Muyu looked at the tiger shadows in the sky and nodded. This array technique was indeed powerful. It could be used to attack and defend. Not bad. With all of you here, even the crossing tribulation stage mutated races won't be able to enter, Muyu praised. The middle-aged man in the lead was slightly surprised to find that all of their attacks had been neutralized by Muyu. He then roared, You damned mutated races. The Shadow Sword Alliance is not a place you can mess with. Shadow Sword Alliance? This is the Shadow Sword Alliance? Chapter 1134. Can I be the leader of the Shadow Sword Alliance? Xiao Shui asked excitedly. Xiao Shui rubbed Xiao Shui's head and said, No, you're at most a cute leader. Muyu stood still in the 8 trigrams extermination formation. He carefully observed the ingenuity of the formation and found that it was more than enough to trap a master in the second sky of Tribulation Realm. Every pattern of the formation was almost perfect. Anyone who didn't know the formation would find it difficult to find the weakness of the formation. Dad, you designed this formation perfectly, but it's a pity. I know you best. Muyu smiled, and a pattern of formation rolled out from his hand. It swept to the 8 trigrams extermination formation under the middle-aged leader's feet at a tricky angle and destroyed the formation eye of the pattern. Bang! The array eye was broken, and the 8 people cried out in horror. They immediately jumped back and looked at Muyu in bewilderment. You actually managed to break our array formation? Impossible. Venerable Dead would said that if you want to break the formation, you can't do it unless your cultivation is higher than the second sky at Tribulation Realm. The middle-aged leader said in disbelief. Muyu didn't use his real cultivation just now. He even looked like a person in the form synthesis realm. That's enough, Hong Sheng. Stop. An illusory shadow suddenly appeared in the air and shouted at everyone. Then he looked at Muyu silently. This person was Deadwood Evergreen. The middle-aged leader quickly knelt on the ground and saluted. Greetings, Venerable Deadwood. Venerable Deadwood? Xiao Shui burst out laughing. Oh, I'm not used to hearing this name, Elder Deadwood. How dare you insult Deadwood? You're courting death. Taoist Hong Sheng scolded angrily. Deadwood said, That's enough. He's Muyu, the leader of your Shadow Sword Alliance. Can't you recognize him? He really is Alliance Master Muyu? Taoist Hong Sheng was shocked and stunned, but he soon came to his senses. Looking at Muyu, his eyes were full of fear and trepidation. He hurriedly knelt down and said, Alliance Master, please forgive me. I failed to recognize you and offended you. I deserve to die. Muyu raised his hand and helped Taoist Hong Sheng up. He smiled and said, You don't have to be so courteous. You did your job well and did not do anything wrong. Thank you, Alliance Master. Taoist Hong Sheng secretly glanced at Muyu. This person was young and promising, and his cultivation had reached the legendary Deshang realm. Naturally, people were curious and in awe of him. However, seeing that Muyu didn't put on any airs, he also had a good impression of him. After all, this great god's reputation in the world of cultivation had always been extremely prominent, and even Taoist Hong Sheng had never seen him in person. Let's go in first. Hong Sheng, you guys continue to stand guard. Don't make any mistakes. Mu waved his hand and disappeared with Muyu and the other through the door. Pill Cauldron Sect, Ruins Opening Cauldron. Muyu looked at Mu and then smiled. Venerable Mu, can you tell me what's going on now? How did the Shadow Sword Alliance infiltrate the Pill Cauldron Sect? Mu snorted. Hearing Muyu teasing him, he raised his hand and was about to slap the back of Muyu's head, but he thought of something and stopped abruptly. You're now also an Alliance Master. Everyone is counting on you, but you are still not serious. Oh, so after I became the Alliance Master, Venerable Mu won't slap me, right? Muyu nodded thoughtfully. Pa! Mu unceremoniously slapped the back of Muyu's head. No, Mu said unceremoniously. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran couldn't help laughing. Muyu's face was full of helplessness. Godfather, Muyu deserves it, Tian Ran said with a smile. Because of her mother, she had recognized Mu as her godfather. Xiao Shui bowed and said, Greetings, Venerable Mu. Mu was about to nod in response when Xiao Shui suddenly said in a strange tone, What godfather? Shouldn't you be calling him father-in-law? Dummy said innocently, Xiao Shui, I heard that son-in-law calls him father-in-law. Oh, right. Then you should call him father, right? Xiao Shui corrected. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran suddenly blushed. They didn't know what to do. Muyu said generously, It's fine. It's not easy for wives to see their father-in-law. You should call him father. Xiao Shui and Tian Ran hesitated for a moment, then glared at Mu Yu. They then bowed to Kumu. Father. Kumu opened his mouth. Clearly, he didn't know how to react. Suddenly, he remembered Mu Yu. He didn't expect to have 2 daughters-in-law. He quickly squeezed out a smile and said, "Well, I didn't prepare any gifts. You call me father too suddenly. I didn't know what to bring. Let me think, As he spoke, he glared at Mu Yu angrily. Mu Yu was being glared at by 3 people in a row. He was quite upset. You must be joking. We are your juniors. We should be the ones being rude. We didn't prepare any gifts for you," Xiao Shui said gently. "Suddenly being so polite is making me feel uncomfortable. Why don't you each prepare some roast duck for me as a gift?" Xiao Shui said casually. Mu Yu rudely rubbed Xiao Shui's head. Then he said seriously, "Father, what happened? Why is the alliance still? I always thought that you didn't like the 2 words Jianing." Kumu glanced at Tian Ran and remembered her identity. He held back from scolding Jianing and Chenfeng. He said, "You were lost outside for a year. The aliens invaded the 3rd heaven and broke through countless cities. Now, our Pill Cauldron sect and Array faction are the last strongholds of the 3rd heaven. Come with me." Kumu brought Mu Yu and the others to the sky above the Pill Cauldron sect. At this time, countless formations were set up in the Pill Cauldron sect. Inside each formation was a formation house. Countless self-cultivators and mortals lived in the formations. Each house floated in the air. They were arranged in picturesque disorder and covered the entire territory of the Pill Cauldron sect. Counting carefully, the total number of people in the Pill Cauldron sect was no less than 500,000. Kumu explained, "Now, the Pill Cauldron sect is no longer a pure sect. It has become a fortress for humans to resist the aliens. When Master Lu came to find me last time, he said that you created a Jianing faction. Although I didn't want to, your current reputation in the self-cultivator world still has some influence. Also, you have the title of that guy's disciple. So, I took the initiative to form the Sword Shadow Alliance for the humans who didn't fall. I'll let you be the alliance leader for free." Mu Yu rubbed his forehead. He could not find the words to refute, because he was indeed a cheap alliance leader. All the big and small matters of the alliance leader were handled by Kumu and Master Lu. Kumu controlled the ruins opening cauldron and had the strength that even Bai Jie feared. No one dared to disobey. Because I'm your father, they took the initiative to call me Venerable One. Now that you're back, you have to pay attention to your image. Be more mature. You're the backbone of the human race. Don't always be so frivolous." Kumu said angrily. This made Mu Yu a little embarrassed. He muttered, "Isn't that because you order me around? Are you dissatisfied?" Kumu snorted. "No, I wouldn't dare," Mu Yu said helplessly. After a long while, the dead tree said again, "Tell me everything that happened in the past year when you disappeared." Mu Yu had only stayed in the ancient battlefield for a few days. He didn't expect that a year had passed in the 3rd heaven. He sorted out his thoughts and told everything. He didn't hide anything from Deadwood Daddy. "This is the dummy you mentioned?" Kumu looked at Dummy and suddenly thought of something. He said in surprise, "You're from the giant beings?" "Dummy is from the giant beings." "How did you know?" "I thought only Master knew." Dummy listens to Master. Dummy scratched his head. Mu Yu asked, "Is the giant beings a very powerful race?" "Very powerful. They're an ancient race from another world. There are very few of them. Their existence was a threat to many races. Later, because they were slow, they were massacred by other races. I learned from the ancient books that I thought the giant beings had been completely wiped out." Deadwood couldn't help but look at Dummy. Mu Yu was also open-minded about Dummy's identity. Dummy could kill Yuhan Sha, who was ranked 3rd on the Supreme Immortal list, with his bare hands. How could his background be so simple? "Dad, what's the current situation of the mutated race?" A total of 21 races came to the 3rd heaven. The other party is led by Bai Jie. According to the news, there are at least 50 great vehicle stage experts. Now, we only have 4 great vehicle stage experts on our side. The gap is too big. Now, Inai Lei and Daoist Chu Byuku were seriously injured by Bai Jie a year ago. They haven't recovered yet. The demon race has 5 demon kings who can fight, but even together, there's a huge gap in strength. They can't fight against the mutated race. All of you have returned this time, bringing us hope. Kumu said. There were very few great vehicle stage cultivators on the human side. Kumu was the most powerful one. Although he was only a soul, he controlled one of the 9 Tao artifacts, the ruins opening cauldron. Bai Jie couldn't do anything. And I Lei and Daoist Chubuku were seriously injured by Bai Jie on the day the extreme immortal monument was destroyed and the mutated race invaded. They barely escaped. There's another great vehicle stage expert. You should meet him, Kumu said. Who is it? Muyu asked. It's me. A cold voice sounded from the side. A man with a determined face appeared in front of Muyu, the former nameless swordsman who relied on an iron sword to travel the world. People called him Broken Sword. It's you. Muyu was surprised. Broken Sword, and he had crossed paths before. Not long after he left the Mayan mountain range, he met him. At that time, Lil Handsome also saved the woman that Broken Sword liked. This person could be considered Gu Etien's half-master, although Gu Etien had never admitted it. Where's Gu Etien? He took my sword. It's time to get my sword back. Nameless said. Gu Etien is in the Moyun mountain range with my senior brother. Muyu is still grateful to Nameless. The sword intent that Nameless gave him helped him overcome several difficulties. Chapter 1135. Muyu was actually very surprised. At that time, how could he have thought that the person he met turned out to be a master of the Deshang stage? After a while, Daoist Chu Buku and Tan Xingchuan also appeared in the air. The two of them seemed to be a little unstable. Muyu could see the hidden injuries in their bodies at a glance. Their meridians were severely damaged. Greetings, seniors. Muyu cupped his hands. My disciple didn't come back with you? Daoist Chu Buku asked anxiously. He's back. He's in the Moyun mountain range. It's a long story, but we're not in any danger, Muyu said. It's good that he's fine. My sloppy disciple broke through to the Great Ascension stage a few days before the extreme immortal monument opened. He's a genius who broke through to the Great Ascension stage at the age of 37. Nothing can happen to him. Daoist Chu Buku heaved a sigh of relief and then added, Of course, Muyu, you're still more powerful. Senior, you flatter me. Everyone has different opportunities. Muyu is only 26 years old now, but he was a talented and intelligent person. Whether it was him or his senior brothers, they were extremely talented. However, his 3 senior brothers did not rely on themselves to comprehend the Great Ascension stage domain. Instead, they integrated with Spirit Lord Yu Meng's domain. They were different from Muyu. Tan Xingchuan also nodded slightly. He looked at Muyu in surprise. He could not see through Muyu now. Obviously, Muyu's growth was beyond his expectations. Even he could not see through Muyu's depth. We have hope now that you're back. Tan Xingchuan smiled. Muyu thought of the old city lord He Jinglong and Xian Zhengtang's family. He asked, Senior, where's the old city lord and Xian Zhengtang's family? Tan Xingchuan said, They're here. You can resurrect them at any time. Muyu nodded. Only people like Xian Zhengtang's family and old city lord He Jinglong deserve to live. In short, the current situation is not optimistic. Xiao Shui, immediately go to the open ruins cauldron to cultivate the shadow art. When you reach the Great Ascension stage, my father will use the open ruins cauldron to protect you. Muyu said, All right. Xiao Shui also knew the seriousness of the matter. Now that they were going to war with the foreign races, there were too few Grand Ascension stage cultivators on the human race's side. She had to improve her strength so that she could lead Water Yuman to participate in the war. Tian Ran didn't feel good watching Xiao Shui leave. She gritted her teeth and said, Muyu, I'm going to train too. Muyu understood what Tian Ran was thinking. She was originally the daughter of Jian Ying and Chun Feng, and her talent was also second to none. However, she was relatively young, and she did not have Xiao Shui, who was possessed by Spirit Lord Yu Meng. Therefore, she was only at the tribulation passing stage. However, She did not want to be a burden to everyone. Her father wanted to protect the world, and she wanted to do something for the human race. You can train, but don't think too much. You have to be balanced. Xiao Shui's identity is different from yours. Do you understand? Muyu comforted her. I will do my best to catch up to Xiao Shui, Tian Ran said firmly. Dummy said naively, Little Tian Ran, Dummy will accompany you to train. Dummy will protect little Tian Ran from Master. Okay, thank you, Dummy. Tian Ran nodded. Dummy rubbed its head and said, if only little Tian Ran had Master's beautiful mountain. That mountain can resonate with little Tian Ran and help little Tian Ran increase her cultivation. What beautiful mountain? Tian Ran asked curiously. It's a beautiful mountain. Dummy used to like playing hide-and-seek with little Handsome on the mountain. Dummy laughed. Muyu frowned and took out the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain. He asked, Dummy, is this the beautiful mountain you were talking about? Dummy looked at the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain in shock and nodded. Mumu, you have one too? Hey, this is Master's. Why did you take it? You have to give it to little Tian Ran. Little Tian Ran's aura is connected to the mountain. When Master was training, he told Dummy that his blood and the mountain were one. That's why the mountain can resonate with him. But the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain has been dormant. Isn't it a doctrine artifact without yin and yang? Muyu asked, puzzled. Ku Mu said, this doctrine artifact isn't simple. Sword Shadow and Chun Feng's control of doctrine artifacts far surpasses the two of us. Muyu gave the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain to Tian Ran. When Tian Ran touched the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain, she suddenly exclaimed softly. Then, the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain emitted a ray of light that enveloped Tian Ran. Then, Tian Ran disappeared from the Sky Amplification Reincarnation Mountain. Muyu and the others could clearly see that Tian Ran was like a small person, walking up the mountain path. Dummy held the Sky Amplification Reincarnation seal and said, Dummy wants to protect little Tian Ran. Dummy will accompany little Tian Ran in her cultivation. Muyu didn't expect that the doctrine artifact that his master left behind would be helpful to Tian Ran. He immediately let Dummy enter the ruins cauldron to protect Tian Ran. In the pill hall, Muyu silently listened to Taoist Yundan and Helian Kong explain the current situation to him. There are only 8 tribulation stage self-cultivators in the entire Sword Shadow. Muyu scanned the people in the pill hall and felt very depressed. Dozens of tribulation stage experts from the 8 sects had surrendered to the mutated race or were controlled by the mutated race. There were only 8 tribulation stage self-cultivators left in the human race who weren't willing to surrender to the mutated race. This included Helian Kong, who had a special identity and didn't have a physical body. If Muyu and the others didn't come back, then there would only be 4 Great Ascension Stage experts and 8 Tribulation Stage experts in the entire Sword Shadow. According to the information gathered in the past year, the mutated race had at least 50 Great Ascension Stage experts and no less than 200 Tribulation Stage experts. The difference in strength was too great. Yes, there are 2 elders from the 8 sect who didn't want to live and fled back. They are Taoist Yu He from the Earth Emperor sect and Song Wanzi from the Shinling sect. They didn't fall into the Divine Soul Array. Kumu has already checked them. Helian Kong said, Greetings to the leader. Taoist Yu He and Song Wanzi immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. Taoist Yu He's hair and beard were all white. He looked to be at least 80 years old, and his cultivation was at the 3rd sky of the tribulation stage. Song Wanzi was about the same age as Taoist Yu He, and his cultivation was at the 2nd sky of the tribulation stage. Senior Song Wanzi, it's you. Muyu looked at Song Wanzi in front of him in surprise. When the White Ape Demon King had just returned to the 3rd sky, he brought a group of demons to fight for the spiritual Chi of the 8 Grass Village. At that time, the human reinforcements hadn't arrived yet. Muyu fought with the identity of a human traitor and defeated the demons. At that time, Song Wanzi even planned to capture Muyu. However, at that time, Sangwanzi was only at the body fusion stage. Over the years, he had broken through to the tribulation stage. Sangwanzi lowered his head in fear and trepidation and said, "Back then, this subordinate had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai in the Eight-Grass Village. I hope the leader can forgive me." Muyu helped Sangwanzi up and said, "Senior Sangwanzi, there's no need to be so polite. Let's not talk about the past for the time being. It's great that you haven't forgotten your identity." The leader's words are very true, Sangwanzi said respectfully. He had never thought that Muyu, who was only at the out-of-body stage back then, could become the leader of the Shadow Sword Alliance. Although the position of a leader was agreed upon by the Dead Tree and the proactive Master Lu, Muyu's strength was enough to take on this heavy responsibility. As a human, I naturally don't want to live under the control of others. If you have any orders, just say the word. This subordinate will definitely sacrifice his life to kill those outsiders. Although Taoist Yu he was old, he still exuded a strong backbone. Medicine Master said from the side, "Muyu, Taoist Yu he is the master of Kai Lai's brother, Xinggao. I remember that you should know Xinggao." The two brothers are cultivating together right now. Muyu nodded happily. Of course, Muyu knew this pair of brothers who were randomly named. In fact, he had a good impression of Xinggao. Senior Yu, he has the determination to kill the enemy. He's the backbone of the human race. In the future, I'll need everyone's help. Muyu said. These two are Taoist Hualong and Taoist Shengming. They are secluded, rogue cultivators of the cultivation world. Helian Kong introduced. Greetings, leader. Taoist Hualong and Taoist Shengming also stood up and bowed. Both of them were the older generation with white hair and beards. They were very old. Muyu didn't put on airs. He said, "Seniors, there's no need to be so polite." As for Taoist Jiangyu from the Life and Death sect, he doesn't like to talk much. We don't know, but Master Lu said that he was your guest. Taoist Yindan looked at Jiangyu, who was sitting in the corner with a straight face. When Jiangyu was young, he was hunted down by the Life and Death sect with the reputation of killing his master. Jiangyu didn't want to say anything about the specific situation. Even Taoist Yundan and the others couldn't do anything about it. In addition, there were too few tribulation-passing experts in the human race. Jiangyu was a 9th heaven tribulation-passing expert. They didn't want to bury this person. He could be trusted. Muyu said. Jiangyu stood up and cupped his hands towards Muyu. He said stiffly, "I didn't expect you to enter the Grand Ascension realm so quickly. Jiangyu came here by teleportation formation. Now, through Deadwood's means, a teleportation formation was set up between the Pill Cauldron sect and the Formation sect. Now, there are many human traitor corpses in the cultivation world waiting for you to refine." Muyu smiled faintly. His laughter was suffused with an awe-inspiring, killing intent, causing the others to turn solemn. "I also want to refine a foreign race's corpse." Jiangyu sat down again. Zhuge Shaosheng was also one of the 8 tribulation-passing experts of the human race. However, he had been assisting several demon kings in stabilizing the seal in the demon race for the past year. Deadwood asked him to go, so he wasn't present. Muyu counted carefully and then asked, "Including Zhuge Shaosheng, there are only 7. Where's the other tribulation-passing expert?" Helian Kong and Taoist Yundan looked at each other and sighed. Deadwood said, "The other one is Martial Uncle Yuanda. He's not here." Martial Uncle Yuanda's brain was injured. He forgot everything and his mind is not clear. Even I can't heal this kind of injury. Bai Jie's Divine Soul formation was too vicious. He knew that you would remove the Divine Soul formation, so he tampered with it. Anyone who was hit by his Divine Soul formation would suffer irreversible injuries after being removed. So, strictly speaking, there are only 7 of them. Now, the tribulation-passing experts of the Sword Shadow Alliance were all of the older generation. Although they wanted to kill the enemy, they were too old after all. Among the Grand Ascension Realm experts, Venerable Enai Lei and Taoist Chubuku were also seriously injured. If it weren't for the existence of the ruins opening cauldron and the formation hall, the 3rd heavenly layer would have fallen long ago. In the entire formation hall, except for Muyu, the 7 tribulation-passing experts 4 Grand Ascension Realm experts, and many Unity Realm elders felt a heavy pressure. Chapter 1136. The atmosphere was very depressing. If it wasn't for Muyu bringing back the Deshang stage dummy and the crossing tribulation stage Qiao Shui and Tian Ran, everyone would be in even more despair. They could only hide in the Pill Cauldron sect and the Array sect for the rest of their lives. Muyu sat on the chair and pondered. Everyone was looking at him. The strongest person now was Muyu. He was the faith of the entire Sword Shadow Alliance, not only because of himself, but also because he had 3 powerful senior brothers. He was the disciple of the true god, Sword Chen. Everyone was waiting for Muyu's decision. "Father, I'll have to trouble you to bring Senior Yuan to here," Muyu said softly. "Okay." Kumu didn't say much. The entire Pill Cauldron sect was under his control. With just a thought, Taoist Yuanda was already brought to the Pill Hall. Taoist Yuanda looked at everyone in panic and shouted, "Don't kill him. He can't die. I'm not dead. You don't have to blame yourself." Kumu integrated a formation pattern into Taoist Yuanda's back, calming him down. Then he said, "Muyu, I've asked them to gather material for the past year. I've already refined the incomplete returning pill. Unfortunately, I couldn't fuse it at the last step. Now that you're back, why don't you try fusing the incomplete returning pill?" Many people knew that the returning pill had inadvertently healed Kumu's injuries and allowed him to regain his youth. However, the returning pill was an incomplete pill. It was something that couldn't be refined successfully. The reason why it could be refined successfully was because of Muyu's would control ability and a drop of his blood. Helian Kong also said, "Yes, Muyu. If you can refine it successfully, we might be able to heal the injuries of Taoist Nai Lei and Taoist Chubuku." The inventor of the returning pill was Taoist Juyang. He was Helian Kong's disciple and had a deep relationship with Helian Kong. "Father, how many returning pills did you refine?" Muyu asked. 2. This material is too rare. It's hard to find a second set of many of these materials, Gumu said. Muyu pondered for a moment, then said, "Let's put the returning origin pill aside first. I can use another method to treat Yuanda Taoist." The power of the domain spread out from his body and surrounded Taoist Yuanda. His left eye lit up with white light, while his right eye flickered with black light. The 2 completely different auras intertwined with each other and formed a huge pressure. Everyone in the pill hall was shocked. Domain ability, life and death controls the universe. In Muyu's eyes, 2 beams of black and white light shot into Taoist Yuanda's mind. Within his domain, everything was under his control, including Taoist Yuanda's life and death. His gaze focused on Taoist Yuanda's mind, reversing all of his past memories. The injuries in his mind were also reversed. Just like when he faced Han Xiang-Wan destroyed his memories. However, it was forcefully restored by Muyu. Taoist Yuanda's panicked eyes gradually regained clarity and became serious. He looked at Muyu in a daze, then exclaimed, "Muyu!" When Taoist Yuanda shouted the 2 words Muyu, Gumu and the others were shocked. They originally thought that if they wanted to restore Yuanda, they would need to use returning origin pill. However, no one expected that Muyu's domain actually had such a powerful effect. How can Yu Qingquan's domain be so powerful? Gumu couldn't help but feel shocked. Taoist Yuanda looked at Muyu. Very quickly, he realized that the powerful aura emitted from Muyu's body had already far surpassed the might of a tribulation passing stage. It was the pressure of a great ascension stage. Muyu's eyes gradually returned to normal. He smiled and said, "Senior, are you all right?" Taoist Yundan stood up in surprise and asked anxiously, "Martial Uncle, are you all right?" Taoist Yuanda completely remembered everything. In Muyu's heaven-defying domain, he even remembered what happened during the period of time when he lost his memories, including how he was controlled to frame Zhuge Shaosheng, and how he was controlled by Jie to leave Gumu's side, causing Gumu to have an accident. Everything returned to his mind. Taoist Yuanda's face darkened with guilt. Then he nodded silently. I'm fine. Taoist Yin Dan and the others finally calmed down. Not only was Yuanda an expert of tribulation passing stage, he was also an 8-stage alchemist. Although he wasn't good at fighting, he could provide powerful medicinal supplements for fighting. He was an indispensable person. Muyu said, Now, we need to truly face the strange races. Other than my 3 senior brothers, there is also Shiman Wuji, Wan Wan, and Senior Chu Byuku's disciple Chu Xiaoqi, who is at great ascension stage. Even so, the predicament we are facing is still very big. Everyone, go back and prepare and wait for orders. Yes, Alliance Master. Everyone bowed and looked at Muyu in awe. Muyu's ability just now was enough to intimidate everyone. That domain that controlled life and death had subdued everyone. They all knew that following Muyu was equivalent to having 2 lives. In the blink of an eye, life and death were enough to revive them. This was also the only slight advantage they had against the strange races. Taoist Yuanda did not leave. He stood under the array hall uneasily and looked at Gumu and Muyu with guilt, his face pale. Please forgive me, Lord Alliance Master and Lord Venerable. Taoist Yuanda suddenly wanted to kneel down, but Gumu held him firmly and did not let Taoist Yuanda bow. Why are you kneeling with us? Is your brain still muddled? Gumu snorted impolitely. Taoist Yuanda was so ashamed that his face turned red. I was wrong in the past. Please, Lord Venerable and Alliance Master. Gumu raised his eyebrows and looked at Taoist Yuanda meaningfully. This old man with the highest seniority in Pill Cauldron sect used to scold Gumu as if he expected better from him. He basically did not have any good words with Gumu. However, Gumu had never resented him. He left Pill Cauldron sect in the past because he did not want to make things difficult for Taoist Yundan. All right, Senior, just call me by my name. You call me Alliance Master, and call me Lord Venerable. I keep feeling that something is missing. This is not your style. You are also my father's father-in-law, so there's no need to be so polite. Muyu spread his hands indifferently. Gumu also showed a faint smile. Aren't you usually very stubborn? You feel uncomfortable when you see me not scolding people. Muyu touched his chin. Why does this sentence sound so familiar? Gumu often scolded Muyu before, and it had become normal for him to scold Muyu. Gumu looked at Muyu threateningly, and Muyu did not continue. Taoist Yuanda shook his head awkwardly. I was short-sighted. I didn't expect you to hide your strength so deeply. You've clearly stepped into the Grand Ascension stage a long time ago and even controlled the ruins opening cauldron, but you've never told me about it. You've caused me to misunderstand for so many years. I've even stopped progressing because of you giving up on the Tao of pills. I don't need to say anything to you. Gumu's illusory body floated to the chair and sat down. I know, you don't want to make things difficult for Taoist Yundan. At that time, I was so angry that I didn't think of this. I was confused. Taoist Yuanda said. The one who controlled the opening cauldron was the master of Pill Cauldron sect. Gumu did not want to be the sect master of Pill Cauldron sect at that time, so he chose to leave. It's not easy to make you admit that you were confused, Gumu said faintly. Muyu laughed and said, Senior, don't blame yourself too much. My father is cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He is happier than anyone that you can come back to life. It's just that he wants to save face and doesn't like to say nice things. Who are you saying want to save face? Gumu asked angrily. Well, my father doesn't want to save face. In short, he's shameless. Little Shuai said enthusiastically. Slap. A slap landed on the back of Muyu's head. Muyu looked helpless. Although the slap did not hurt or itch, he was still very wronged. I didn't say that. You hit little Shuai. Taoist Yuanda could not help but laugh. Muyu, you haven't changed at all. There are some things that don't need to change. There's no one else here, and we're all on the same side. It's very normal to act one way in front of others and another in private. You don't have to be polite. I'm not a cold person. Muyu shrugged helplessly. Then can I go out and tell others that I'm the Venerable One's father-in-law, and let them call me Venerable Father? Taoist Yuanda asked carefully. You really know how to take advantage of others. Muyu gritted his teeth and said, Taoist Yuan usually had the highest seniority in Danding's sect and did things according to his preferences. No one could do anything to him. In the past, when Muyu first came to Danding's sect, he was the one who knew how to take advantage of his seniority and set up all kinds of traps for Muyu. Although in the end, Muyu ruthlessly extorted him a few times instead. Gu Mu said coldly, You want Grandmaster Helian Kong to call you Venerable Father? Taoist Yuan thought of Helian Kong's identity, and his face instantly turned green. He hurriedly shook his head. Pretend I didn't say anything. Pretend I didn't say anything. It's fine as long as I know it in my heart, right? Anyway, the two of you are younger than me in seniority. Your skin is so thick. Little Shuai said from the side. Taoist Yuan said solemnly, Don't worry, I'll definitely kill my enemies bravely in the future. I'll bring out the determination of an old steed in the stable and fight on the battlefield to make up for my mistakes. You're an alchemist. Are you courting death on the battlefield? Gumu said angrily. Taoist Yuan awkwardly pulled at his beard. Then he thought of something and said solemnly, That's right. There's something I forgot to tell you. Back then, when I was being controlled, I went to the third layer palace and accidentally learned of something. Bai Jia said that as long as they found the ethereal land and broke the balance of the ethereal land, they would be able to live openly in the third layer palace. I don't know if this information is important because I don't know what the ethereal land means. Gu Mu's expression turned serious. Are you sure? Chapter 1137. Taoist Yuan nodded. At that time, Bai Jia asked all of us if we knew where the third heaven's empty spirit land was, but none of us knew. Later on, he made us take the initiative to forget this matter and erased our memories. However, Muyu's ability just now seemed to have allowed me to remember all the things that I was forced to forget. I remember many things clearly, even the details of you wetting the bed when you were young. What's wrong with you again? Ku Mu glared angrily, wishing he could slap this old fart to death. Taoist Yuan hurriedly hid behind Muyu and said timidly, Muyu, my little ancestor, you will help this old man, right? He is impudent. You are a good child who respects your teacher. You have to stand on my side. I just remembered some things out of habit and blurted it out. Muyu really wanted to laugh. This old fart was really asking for a beating. He had just forgiven him, and his true nature was revealed. In front of outsiders, he had the demeanor of an immortal, but in front of them, he was flaunting his seniority. However, Muyu did not mind Taoist Yuan flaunting his seniority. He still felt that the matter at hand was more important. So he asked, Senior, are you sure Bai Jia said this? Because whether it was Muyu or Ku Mu, they both knew about the ethereal land. They had even been there before. I am very sure. I have already said that my memories have become very clear. I have already remembered many things that I have forgotten. Taoist Yuan said. Muyu and Ku Mu both had solemn expressions as they fell into deep thought. The ethereal land was a place where the 5 elements were absolutely balanced. Back then, in order to set up the 9th heaven-sealing demon formation, the 5 of them had gone to this place. I remember Master said that the 9th heaven-sealing demon formation and the ethereal land were specially used to restrain the Yumon. How is it related to the other races? Muyu asked in confusion. Ku Mu pondered for a moment. The 9th heaven-sealing demon formation is indeed used to deal with the Yumon, but the ethereal land is not as simple as dealing with the Yumon. The world exists because of balance. The ethereal land is a powerful array set up by Jian Ying and Chun Feng. In reality, the ethereal land is a perfect landscape. This time, Muyu was really stunned. The ethereal land is the perfect mountains and rivers? Then where is it? The perfect river and mountain had always been a thorn in the side of the outsiders. Both the Shadowless tribe and the Shadowless tribe wanted to find it. After Qingyan activated the perfect river and mountain array, he had protected everyone. However, Bai Jia had thought of a way to destroy the perfect river and mountain array. Muyu did not expect that he had been to the perfect river and mountain before. It was indeed a peaceful place. No matter what the 5 elements were, they could not be controlled there. Even the destroyed stones would return to their original places. Kumu said, "Do you remember the 8 sealed lands that you asked me about?" "Yes, Grandpa village leader found them and told me about them. The cracks of the 8 worlds, Moyen Mountain Range, Mass Burial Valley, the Gate of Hell's Ghost Pit, 50-Mile Garden in the south, the valley you were in before, the island in the ocean, the swamp of the Devil Race, a barren forest, and a mountain range near Penglien City." Muyu had never been to the last 2 places. Kumu continued, "The array of the 8 sealed lands is used to connect to the final ethereal land. Its location is unpredictable and can only be found through special means." I forgot about this. If I knew that Baijia would destroy the extreme immortal steel, I would have let you protect the perfect river and mountain. If the extreme immortal steel was not destroyed, the 9 Xian immortals would be in the hands of Muyu and company. By then, the power of Tianheng would be more than enough to deal with Baijia. So they put all their attention on the Xian immortals. In the end, Baijia still found the perfect river and mountain first. Does that mean that as long as we restore the balance of the perfect river and mountain, we can expel all the other races? Muyu asked. That's right, but I think the perfect river and mountain is already protected by Baijia. It won't be easy to find it, but this is the best way to deal with the other races. We have to restore the balance of the perfect river and mountain. Kumu said. Then how do we know where Baijia moved the perfect river and mountain to? Xiao Shui asked. Sword Shadow City. It must be at Sword Shadow City. Yuan the Taoist interrupted. Kumu and Muyu looked at him. Why? Yuan the Taoist said awkwardly. I remember that before Kumu got into trouble, I sent him to Sword Shadow City and asked 100 Herb Hall to send him back to Pill Cauldron Sect. At that time, I didn't leave Sword Shadow City. Instead, I was ordered to stay in Sword Shadow City for a while. In Sword Shadow City, there's a strange formation. Bai Jie told me that this is an amazing formation set up by Jian Ing Chenfeng. It's suitable for moving the ethereal land. At that time, because I was being controlled, he didn't guard against me. Sword Shadow City. Legend had it that after Sword Shadow Chenfeng defeated the Yu Ming demon clan, he settled down here. Thus, in order to commemorate him, the humans named this city Sword Shadow City. Who would have thought that there would be such a story behind this city? It's actually here? Dad, you've been there before. Didn't you notice anything strange? Muyu frowned slightly. Kumu was silent for a while before he said indifferently, I know that he set up a large formation there, but he didn't tell me the reason. I don't like to ask. I'm not interested in anything related to him. Muyu shook his head helplessly. There was a grudge between Kumu and Feng Haochen. This made Muyu quite sad. Since that's the case, then Sword Shadow City is our next target. When the time comes, I'll personally go to Sword Shadow City to check the situation. Muyu said. Yuan the Taoist quickly asked, Do you want me to go with you? I remember where the formation is. No need. You should go back and rest. If you want to take advantage of your seniority in front of others, then hurry up. I can go to Sword Shadow City by myself. Muyu couldn't help but laugh. Yuan the Taoist cultivation was high, and he was also an alchemist. Many people knew about his relationship with Kumu. It was too difficult for him to not take advantage of his seniority. Muyu knew that once he returned, he would definitely boast to others with a sage-like appearance. However, this guy was very reliable. He would do things for the big picture. He was only controlled because he had no choice. Muyu still believed in him. Yuan the Taoist chuckled. With Muyu's words, he looked at Kumu provocatively and said proudly, I don't care about other people's rudeness. Kumu said with a baleful look, Muyu reminded you of some disgraceful things in the past. You better forget about it. If you talk nonsense, I'll lock you up in the ruins opening cauldron. Yuan the Taoist flinched. In the past, he could still scold Kumu. But now, he really didn't dare to. He muttered, People's hearts are not what they used to be. They don't know how to respect the elderly. Then, he quickly left the pill hall. Now that the human race was weak, it was very difficult to fight against the foreign races. Other than those who were greedy for life, the human race didn't lack Xian Zhengtang's family the old city lord, and others. These people were the people that Mu Yu wanted to save. He asked Tan Xingchuan to send Xian Zhongtang's family and the old city lord's soul and body over. Then, he used life and death to revive them in the blink of an eye. I didn't expect that we would really come back to life. The old city lord, He Jinglong, moved his body. His face was filled with excitement. Yes, now, we don't only have to face Yaman, we also have to face the foreign races. When the old city lord, He Jinglong, said resuscitation, Mu Yu also had mixed feelings. This upright elder, although his cultivation was only at the body fusion stage, when Mu Yu couldn't make his own choice in the Eastern Sand City, he was responsible for his own actions based on the old city lord's decision. Since I'm allowed to live again, I will definitely do my best to kill those foreign races. This is my duty, the old city lord said with a determined face. Yes, we'll also not back down, Xian Jingtang also said solemnly. Xian Sidong and Qi Shan looked at each other and held each other's hands tightly. Their eyes revealed a trace of determination. Mu Yu knew that the people he saved were the hope of the human race. Only if they lived, the human race would have hope. He gave a lot of life-saving pills to Xian Zhongtang's family and the old city lord. Life and death could only happen once. Once on the battlefield, if an accident happened, he couldn't revive a second time. Therefore, he had to ensure the safety of these people. The old city lord and Xian Zhongtang's family were arranged to rest at Green Bamboo Peak by Dead Tree. Then Dead Tree said, if we want to fight the foreign races head-on, we will need more helpers. Currently, even with Yuan the Taoist, it was far from enough. For Great Ascension Stage and 8 Tribulation Passing Stage, these people were all from the older generation, especially the 8 Tribulation Passing Stage people. Their average cultivation was not even at the 5th layer of Tribulation Passing Stage. The only ones that could truly make Mu Yu feel at ease on the battlefield were Zhuge Xiaosheng, who had formation skills, and Gu Jiangyu, who could control corpses. Zhuge Xiaosheng's formation skills were enough to make him invincible in the Tribulation Passing Stage. Gu Jiangyu himself was at the 9th layer of Tribulation Passing Stage. With a corpse, he could take on several people. The other self-cultivators couldn't just stand by and watch. They had to strengthen their own strength. Now, there were elixirs refined by the Pill Cauldron sect to provide support. Dead Tree was also teaching the self-cultivators how to use formation skills to improve their battle strength. However, this was far from enough. According to Dead Tree, the Formation Hall and the Ruins Opening Cauldron, these 2 Dao artifacts were the core that guarded the 8 sealed places. They were located at the position of the Tai Chi Yin Yang Eye. Therefore, the Ruins Opening Cauldron and the Formation Hall couldn't be moved. Now, they had become 2 fortresses that guarded the human race and couldn't be moved at will. As for Dead Tree, the soul of a Great Ascension Stage cultivator, he didn't have any battle strength after leaving the Ruins Opening Cauldron. Therefore, among the Great Ascension Stage experts that could participate in the battle, there was one less extremely powerful Dead Tree. You and your senior brothers have different opinions, don't you? Can't you coordinate? Dead Tree looked at Mu Yu. He vaguely knew Mu Yu's inner thoughts. He also knew the relationship between Mu Yu and his senior brothers. The 4 senior brothers had different opinions and couldn't work together. Mu Yu was silent for a moment and said, our opinions differ because of our views on the human race. When facing the foreign race, we all have a common enemy. Chapter 1138. Let's leave the future for the future. I know you'll make the right judgment. There's someone waiting for you outside. I think he's looking for you for something. I'll go back to the Cauldron of Ruins first. Find some time to see if you can heal an Lei and Chu Byuku's injuries. Gumu left the pill hall and returned to the open Ruins Cauldron. Okay. Mu Yu had already noticed the person outside the pill hall. Therefore, Jiangyu had been waiting and didn't leave. What's the matter? Mu Yu walked out and asked. Jiangyu was silent for a moment and said slowly, I have an excessive request. What request? Mu Yu asked in confusion. Therefore, Jiangyu was a man of few words in the past. He was imprisoned in the Twin Corpse Sea by Meng Pa for dozens of years until Mu Yu rescued him. Therefore, Jiang Yu had always stayed in the erase sect and rarely made any requests. Help me kill a guy. Kill who? A Grand Ascension stage corpse race member. Jiang Yu said without confidence. Mu Yu nodded. Okay. Jiang Yu looked at Mu Yu in surprise. He didn't understand why Mu Yu answered so straightforwardly. You don't even want to ask for the reason? All foreign races deserve to die. Isn't it the same no matter who I kill? Mu Yu said calmly. Jiang Yu clenched his fist and said, in the year that you weren't here, I went out to investigate the corpse race. There are also foreign races that came to the third heavenly layer. Their cultivation method is very similar to mine. The difference is that they don't have twins. Their consciousness is generated from the corpses of powerful experts. I can't comprehend the heavenly Tao's law now and am trapped in the ninth heavenly layer. However, I found that if I refine a Grand Ascension stage corpse race member, I can take his domain law and slowly take his cultivation to become a Grand Ascension stage expert. Jiang Yu was originally from the gate of life and death. They were the opposite of the people from the gate of hell. They killed twins and refined their corpses. The corpses had the same cultivation level as their bodies. Therefore, the people from the gate of hell and the people from the gate of life and death were extremely difficult to kill. Their techniques were also very strange. After a pause, Jiang Yu continued, this is the only way for me to step into the Deshang realm. I know this request is excessive. Now, those people in the sword shadow are very wary of me. After all, my reputation was not good before. Even Taoist and Lei has been on guard against me. There are not many people who trust me, so I can only ask you for help. You've already found your target, haven't you? Mu Yu asked. Yes, there are 2 Grand Ascension stage corpse clansmen in our life and death sect. Jiang Yu said. Mu Yu asked, if I make a move, the people of the gate of life and death will also be killed. Your own sect's people, can you watch them die? Old Jiang Yu was silent for a long time before calmly replying, I am not a good person, but at least I am a person. I know which side I should stand on at this juncture. Okay, I'll go to the life and death sect with you tomorrow. Mu Yu didn't say much. He believed that Jiang Yu, this person, had his own principles, even though his reputation was not good. Jiang Yu said, what do you want from me in exchange? Kill alien clansmen, the more the better. It's that simple. It's that simple. Okay, Mu Yu was going to the life and death sect. Kumu was worried about him, so he asked Wu Ming to accompany him. Wu Ming didn't object. He and Mu Yu set off empty-handed. You gave your sword to Guitian. You don't want to bring another sword? Mu Yu asked. No, as long as there is a sword in the heart, everything is a sword. You and I are both people who use swords. How can we not understand this? Wu Ming was dressed in simple hemp clothes, standing with his hands behind his back. There was no aura on his body. Anyone who saw him would not associate him with the famous broken sword. You're right, Mu Yu nodded slightly, and then said, but it's better to have a sword in my hand than no sword at all. If you don't have a suitable sword, it's the same as having no sword. To me, except for my own sword, other people's swords are no different from broken copper and iron, Wu Ming said. Wu Ming's sword was an iron sword full of cracks. There was nothing fancy about it, but once any swordsman was familiar with his sword and injected his soul into his sword, no matter how ordinary the sword was, it would be a divine sword. I really want to see your swordsmanship with my own eyes. As the disciple of Sword Shadow Chen Feng, your swordsmanship is famous all over the world. It's rare. When I first saw you, you were only a swordsman in the Jinan period. Now you're invincible. I'm curious about your growth. Wu Ming's eyes were full of challenge. Mu Yu had seen this kind of eyes from Gu Yitian. Mu Yu said, you'll see it. This is also why you agreed to come with me, isn't it? That's right. Wu Ming didn't hide anything. Mu Yu's swordsmanship was inherited from Sword Shadow Chen Feng. The 9 Guides of Heavenly Sword was known as the #1 swordsmanship in the world. Any top swordsman wanted to challenge it, and Wu Ming was no exception. Mu Yu had also seen Wu Ming's swordsmanship before. The power of that sword was not to be underestimated, not to mention that Wu Ming had stepped into the great vehicle stage and comprehended his own domain. What would a domain that focused on the sword be? You'll understand when I kill the alien. Mu Yu said. The three of them went to Sword Shadow City, but they didn't go in. They just looked at Sword Shadow City from afar. Now, all the residents of Sword Shadow City were enslaved. The situation was similar to Mist Breath City, but there were more than a dozen powerful auras that were faintly discernible. They were all in the great vehicle stage. Senior Yuando was right. Sword Shadow City is indeed the focus of their guard. Mu Yu didn't go in rashly. If the ethereal land was really transferred to Sword Shadow City, it wouldn't be wise for him to rush in now. Not to mention those great vehicle stage aliens. With their strength, they might not be able to defeat them. Bai Jie had guarded this place so tightly. It was impossible for him to not have a backup plan, and he wouldn't let Mu Yu succeed so easily. Perhaps when Mu Yu stepped into Sword Shadow City, Bai Jie would rush over. Even if Mu Yu had a powerful domain now, it was still unrealistic for him to face more than a dozen great vehicle stage experts. Are we going to sneak in? Gu Jiangyu asked. No need. Let's go to the Gate of Life and Death first. Mu Yu didn't stay in Sword Shadow City. He directly left and headed to the Gate of Life and Death. The Gate of Life and Death was located in an extremely cold area. The Gate of Hell was deep underground, and the Gate of Life and Death was located on 4 gloomy, snowy mountains. This was an extremely cold place. Snowflakes floated in an area of a few thousand li. The temperature was terrifyingly low. Mortals couldn't survive in this place. The low temperature can keep the corpse chi from dissipating. There's a corpse spring in that mountain, specially used to soak corpses. If I'm not wrong, those 2 Grand Ascension Stage corpse race people are in the corpse spring. Gu Jiangyu pointed at the snowy mountain in the distance that reached into the clouds. The snowy mountains here hadn't melted for thousands of years. They flickered with cold light. Even the foot of the mountain was covered in ice. The sky was gloomy, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Not a single blade of grass grew on the ground. It was a land of death. 4 great vehicle stage auras. Wu Ming said. Gu Jiangyu's expression changed slightly. Always thought there were only 2. How can there be 2? 2. Mu Yu looked thoughtfully at the Gate of Life and Death in front of him. Gu Jiangyu wasn't a great vehicle stage expert himself. He said worriedly, let's go back and plan. Mu Yu had already patrolled around the Gate of Life and Death. He said indifferently, no need. Leave the 4 great vehicle stage experts to the 2 of us. You'll be responsible for the fish that escaped the net. Be careful. But no buts, it's just killing. Wu Ming also didn't have any thoughts of planning. Gu Jiangyu still wanted to say something, but Mu Yu and Wu Ming had already taken a step forward and disappeared on the spot. When they reappeared, they were already above the 4 snowy mountains of the Gate of Life and Death. The gloomy sky began to roll and gather towards the center. A sword ray condensed from the firmament, suffused with cold, killing intent. It instantly fell. Boom! The terrifying sword chi was like a divine blade, descending from the heavens. The 4 towering snowy mountains couldn't resist this sudden sword chi at all. With one slash, the snowy mountains were directly cut open. The sword chi invaded the entire mountain, and the entire snowy mountain collapsed. Every mountain rock, every snowflake was turned into ashes. There were countless people of the Gate of Life and Death hidden in the snowy mountains. Many corpse race people were cultivating in seclusion. Before they could react, they were directly killed by the great vehicle stage's sword chi. They were crushed by the sword chi. In just a blink of an eye, the landscape of the Gate of Life and Death was completely destroyed by Mu Yu's sword chi. Gu Jiangyu looked at Mu Yu in shock from afar. Compared to the past, Mu Yu had already been reborn. The great vehicle stage's sword chi was unstoppable. This sword could destroy heaven and earth, causing everyone in the Gate of Life and Death to tremble. Majestic and imposing, moving forward courageously, the heavenly sword 9 guides lives up to its reputation. Wu Ming was also slightly moved. With Mu Yu's current cultivation, there were only a handful of people in the cultivation world who could withstand this sword. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 figures sped over from the snowy mountains, and stood in the air. They glared at Mu Yu and Wu Ming, the four great vehicle stage experts of the corpse race: Shi Xiao, Shi Qianyu, Shi Zikan, and Shi Yinan. You two reckless human ants, how dare you come to our territory? You're courting death. Shi Xiao, who had the highest cultivation, shouted coldly. These four great vehicle stage experts were all from the corpse race. They had human limbs, but they were not from the normal human race. They were more like a mixture of some other races. Their voices were unpleasant, as if sharp nails were scratching the stone floor. It was uncomfortable. The corpse race was formed by the awakening of spiritual intelligence from dead corpses. Their race was searching for the corpses of experts everywhere. These corpses were experts from various races. They could be from a moon race, the human race, the soul race. The corpse race helped the corpses awaken spiritual intelligence, allowing the corpses to cultivate in another form. After the cultivation, the corpses would gradually change into another form. They would have no hair, an old-fashioned face, copper skin, and as hard as iron. After seeing so many foreign races, I still think that the human form is more pleasing to the eye. Wu Ming looked at the corpse race with disgust. Indeed, Mu Yu nodded. Chapter 1139. Even if the gate of life and death was destroyed, it didn't matter to them because the gate of life and death's defense was impossible to stop a Deshang realm expert. Mu Yu's sword only destroyed the entire mountain gate. The corpse spring that the corpse race valued the most was protected by them. As long as the corpse spring wasn't destroyed, they could bear any losses. Big brother, I alone am enough to take care of these lowly ants. Serene looked arrogantly at Mu Yu and Nameless, not putting them in his eyes at all. Ever since the foreign races invaded the third layer of heaven, all the humans who wanted to resist were all controlled or even killed. The humans had no power to resist and were defeated. Under Bai Jie's lead, they didn't encounter any resistance when they conquered the third layer of heaven. Other than the Erase sect and the Pill Cauldron sect, all the human cities had fallen and the humans had become prisoners. No matter which foreign race it was, they all looked down on the humans. Shi Yinan stood proudly in the air and looked down at Mu Yu. Human ant, are you going to kneel in front of me and surrender, or do you want me to do it myself? Let me tell you, if I do it myself, I will make you wish you were dead. Fourth brother, go easy on him. Don't let him die too quickly. We only want his corpse, but the other races want his painful blood and soul. Shi Xiao Luo chuckled. Don't worry, big brother. We haven't fought properly since we came to the third layer of heaven. My body is rusty. The humans are our toys. We have to play with them before throwing them away. We will slowly crush these ants to death and let them understand the consequences of resisting us in despair. Ha ha ha. Shi Yinan laughed loudly. The other three members of the corpse clan also laughed arrogantly. The four of them completely disdained Mu Yu and Wu Ming. Ever since the invasion of the third heaven by the foreign race army, the human clan had been utterly defeated and had become their slaves. The remaining human clan members had all hidden in the Pill Cauldron sect and the Erase sect. In their opinion, these two people were simply courting death. The way they looked at Mu Yu and John Doe seemed to have announced their death sentences. However, Mu Yu only looked at him indifferently. Without saying anything, he raised his shadow clone sword again. His eyes lit up with black and white light. The power of his domain poured out, enveloping corpse Yinan. Life and death controls the universe. Two rays of black and white light soared into the sky, circling around each other and covering the heavenly sword. The heavenly sword was instantly covered by two powerful and majestic auras, one black and one white. The sword edge trembled slightly, stirring up the wind and clouds, causing the entire earth to tremble violently. Insignificant skill. Shi Yinan sneered and charged straight at Sky's sword. Clang! The sword energy swept across Shi Yinan's body, and his body lit up with a copper light. The copper light let out a muffled sound as it tried to block the sword, but Mu Yu's sword was unbelievably fast. Shi Yinan, who bore the brunt of the attack, was cut in half by Mu Yu's sword. How is this possible? Serene Han's smile instantly froze. He looked at his body that had been split in half in disbelief. There was still black and white sword energy around the wound that had invaded his body like maggots, causing him to lose control of his body. He couldn't gather the corpse energy in his body at all. The insolent laughter had already been replaced by a mournful scream, echoing in the void for a long time. The corpse clan member who had been split in half roared angrily. Half of his wound lit up with a white vitality, while the other half shone with a black death, constantly devouring. People who talk too much die quickly. Muyu said indifferently. Bang! The black and white sword energy suddenly exploded from Inhan's body that had been cut in half, instantly killing him. The remaining 3 members of the corpse race were stunned. The contemptuous smile on their ugly and arrogant faces had been replaced by shock. In their cognition, the human race was a cowardly waste. They were not worth mentioning in front of the powerful alien race. The 3rd heavenly layer had a total of 4 great ascension stage people. 2 of them were seriously injured and did not dare to come out easily. However, none of the 4 corpse race people would have thought that Muyu would only slash down with her sword. The Grand Ascension Stage corpse, Inhan, didn't even have time to release his domain before he was directly killed by Muyu. 4th brother. Shuluo roared in grief and indignation. He stared at Muyu. His eyes seemed to be covered in blood and were filled with endless resentment. Who are you? Muyu slowly raised his head. The person who will kill you. Buzz. The shadow sword once again disappeared into the sky. The black and white sword energy spun and surged like 2 rolling dragons. The sword energy that was tens of thousands of feet long made the whole world faintly feel like it was being torn apart. Shuluo seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "This is the Heaven Sword, the legendary sword, Shadow, Chun Feng's Heaven Sword. Are you Sword Shadow Chun Feng?" Impossible. The Heaven's Keeper said that Sword Shadow Chun Feng had died. Are you a successor? However, Muyu did not pay attention to what Shuluo was saying. The majestic sword energy descended from the sky like a divine light that wanted to destroy everything in the world. Don't underestimate us. The 3 corpse clan members' faces changed completely when they saw the insufferably arrogant Heaven Sword. They no longer dared to underestimate it. The 3 of them roared and charged toward Muyu. The eerie territory lit up from their bodies. The 3 territories overlapped and forcefully resisted Muyu's attack. Boom! The huge territory fluctuation spread out in all directions. The mountains and rivers within 1,000 miles of the gate of life and death were all shattered. The ground cracked and ravines were everywhere. All the mountains were razed to the ground by this attack. Bang! The territory formed by the 3 corpse clan members exploded. They were sent flying and crashed into the ground, creating a huge crater with a diameter of 1,000 meters. However, the 3 corpse clan members were great vehicle stage. Although they were forced to retreat by Muyu's sword energy, they were not killed this time because they used their territory ability in time. But even so, the hearts of the 3 corpse race clansmen were still in turmoil. One must know that Muyu is only one person with a Heaven Sword. The 3 corpse clan members joined forces to fight against Muyu, but they were still unable to resist this sword. Muyu's strength was far beyond their expectations. Are you Sword Shadow Chun Feng's disciple? Impossible. Bai Jie said that Sword Shadow Chun Feng's disciples were all trapped in the ancient battlefield and could not come back. No one can come back from a place like the ancient battlefield. How could a human as powerful as you appear? Luo muttered to himself. He had never seen Jian Ying and Chun Feng's 4 disciples who were at the Mahayana stage. When they invaded the 3rd heaven, Jian Ying and Chun Feng's 4 disciples had already been abandoned in the ancient battlefield. That was why the human race was unable to resist and was enslaved for an entire year. However, a heavenly sword had suddenly appeared and intimidated the 3 Shulu clan members. Your territory is very powerful, Wu Ming said in surprise. Facing the 4 corpse clan members, Muyu did not show any mercy. He directly killed one of the corpse clan members and even broke the other party's 3 overlapping territories with one sword. Mu Yu's strength was far beyond Wu Ming's imagination. I also want to see your territory, Mu Yu said. Mu Yu was very curious. A person who only used a sword must have comprehended a sword territory. How powerful was Wu Ming's territory? You will see it for yourself. Nameless floated out. His sword was not by his side. He clenched his right hand slightly, as if he was holding a piece of heaven and earth. The entire void was trembling slightly, as if heaven and earth were about to become a sword in his hand. A blurry sword intent gradually gathered in his hand. It was like the surging yellow river. The surging sword chi was like waves crashing into the void. It made people feel that the void was filled with biting cold sword chi. His target was the closest to him, Shi Zikan. Third brother. Be careful. Shi Luluo and Shi Qianyu, the 2 corpse clan members, shouted and rushed toward Shi Zikan. The 2 of them were sent flying by Mu Yu's sword. At this moment, they were still some distance away from Shi Zikan. This distance was nothing to a great vehicle stage cultivator, but Wu Ming's sword was unbelievably fast. The 2 of them did not have the time to help Shi Zikan. Shi Zikan realized that he was locked on by Wu Ming's sword. There was no way to avoid it, so he could only face it head-on. I was careless and let you get away with it. Do you really think that we corpse clan members are so easy to mess with? Countless blood-red corpse chi emerged from his body. The corpse chi was extremely pungent. It scattered in the air, but it made him disappear. It was as if he had been enveloped by the corpse chi. Territory, blood corpse decay. In his territory, any spiritual power of spells would be forcibly transformed into scarlet corpse chi that filled the sky. The corpse chi was endless and had no point of attack. The overwhelming corpse chi covered Wu Ming and eroded him crazily. It wanted to corrode Wu Ming into corpse chi as well. However, Wu Ming only swung the sword in his hand. The sword was drawn from the invisible sword chi in his hand. It was simple but domineering. Territory, sword point blue. In his territory, there was only one sword left in everyone's eyes. It was a vast expanse that transformed into thousands of sword chi. This sword had to be met head-on. There was no way to avoid it. When the corpse clan members' blood corpse decay encountered Wu Ming's territory, it was forcibly distorted into the shape of a sword. Shi Zikan was both shocked and furious. He wanted to escape, but the sword had already locked onto him. He could either meet the sword head-on or be destroyed by the sword. There was no way to escape. Ding! The corpse energy that filled the sky met Wu Ming's sword, making a crisp sound. Time seemed to have stopped. The corpse energy that was originally rolling and surging stopped. Then it gradually solidified like yellow sand gathering into stone. Cracks began to appear on the solidified corpse chi. The crisp sound reverberated in everyone's ears. Shi Zikan's eyes were filled with extreme horror. Bang! The corpse chi exploded into dust. The Mahayana realm Shi Zikan had turned into ashes. Third brother. The 2 corpse clan members, Shi Xiaoluo and Shi Qianyu, roared in grief and indignation. They arrived too late and couldn't save their companion. Sword Point Blue broke the spell with one strike. It was a simple strike that couldn't be avoided. It could only be met head-on. This was the powerful territory of a swordsman. Chapter 1140. Shi Xiaoluo and Shi Qianyu's expressions changed when they saw their 2 companions being killed in an instant. They looked at Mu Yu and Wu Ming ferociously. Their anger had reached its peak. However, there were already several auras of the great vehicle stage rushing over from afar. The foreign tribes and other places already knew that this place was under attack and were preparing to come to their aid. The domain of the sword is very strong, Mu Yu praised. As a sword user, he understood how strong this domain was. Wu Ming didn't even use his sword. He just held the void in his hand as if he was using heaven and earth as his sword. His sword momentum was so strong that it was unimaginable. But it can't do anything to you, Wu Ming said calmly. There's no need to say this now. Your domain is already very powerful. Mu Yu's Yu Qiankuan could turn the opponent's domain into his own. He could even control life and death. He also had the 9 Heavenly Sword 9 guides. When he fought with Wu Ming, both of them only used a simple sword. One sword transformed into thousands of illusions. They were so powerful that it was unknown who would win. Their reaction is very fast. We should leave now. Wu Ming looked at the auras of the great vehicle stage flying over from afar. Once so many great vehicle stage experts rushed over, it was unknown whether the two of them could escape unscathed. You killed our people. You want to escape without paying the price? Dream on. Shi Qianyu also felt the reinforcements coming from afar. He looked at Mu Yu and Wu Ming with a ferocious expression. He was prepared to stall the two of them no matter what. No one can stop us if we want to leave. But I think the two of you need to come with me. Mu Yu took a step forward. The golden formation under his feet rolled out and appeared in front of Shi Qianyu. His eyes shot out 2 rays of black and white light that shrouded Shi Qianyu's body. Shi Qianyu roared. He wanted to escape, but he realized that he couldn't escape from this domain no matter what. He screamed and his eyes dimmed. The domain of Yu Qiankuan of life and death erased the consciousness of the other party. The corpse clan member had truly become a corpse. Bastard! I will kill you all! Corpse Luluo roared angrily. Although it was shouting, its body immediately turned around and charged towards the ground. It did not have the slightest intention of resisting or delaying. It had lost 3 of its brothers and did not have the courage to continue fighting. Mu Yu and Wu Ming didn't give chase, because if they delayed any longer, the other Deshang realm foreign races would rush over. They immediately grabbed Shi Qianyu's corpse and left the life and death sect with Jiang Yu. Almost as soon as the two of them left, more than a dozen shadows appeared above the gate of life and death. However, what greeted them was only the desolation before their eyes. Array faction. Gu Jiangyu looked excitedly at Shi Qianyu's corpse in front of him. The strength of this corpse was self-evident. Before the corpse developed consciousness and turned into Shi Qianyu, it was already a powerful cultivator. However, after Shi Qianyu's consciousness was wiped out, this corpse still retained the power of a domain. How are you going to take away this corpse race's domain? Mu Yu asked. Gu Jiangyu said, the corpse race's domain is closely related to their own bodies. Even after death, it will remain in their bodies. I will use the spell I researched to turn its domain into my own domain. This way, I can also step into the Deshang realm. Gu Jiangyu did not hide anything from Mu Yu and told Mu Yu about the spell he researched. Mu Yu looked at the spell Gu Jiangyu created and was slightly surprised. Then, he fell into deep thought. What are you thinking about? Gu Jiangyu saw that Mu Yu did not speak for a long time and asked, Nothing. Hurry up and refine this corpse. I will let the others not disturb you. Mu Yu casually laid down a powerful protective array around Gu Jiangyu. Then, he reconsidered this problem. Refine other people's domain in his own? Mu Yu's Yu Qiankuan could break other people's domain and control it. However, once the other party's domain was removed, he would have to rely on his life and death blink domain. Although the life and death blink domain was already very powerful, Mu Yu had an even bolder idea about Yu Qiankuan's domain. This idea was already born when he faced the soul race from the 3rd layer palace on the ancient battlefield. If he refined other people's domain into his own, what would happen? This was an almost impossible idea. Gu Jiangyu could do it because he had a similar cultivation method as the corpse race. However, Mu Yu did not. However, Mu Yu was not thinking about taking away other people's domain. Instead, he was thinking about comprehending other people's domain. When he used Yu Qiankuan, he used his powerful deduction ability to control the opponent's domain. It was equivalent to copying other people's domain and using the weakness of the domain to make the opponent unable to counterattack. Once other people's domain was removed, his domain would also lose its effect. However, if he could raise Yu Qiankuan to another level, when facing other people's domains, he would be able to completely comprehend their domain. He would no longer rely on other people's domains to display his domain. Would this be possible? Isn't this idea of yours too bold? It sounds very difficult to achieve. Little Shuai said, I know. It is indeed difficult to achieve. After all, a domain is a heavenly Tao law. If you want to permanently control other people's domain, it is equivalent to spending time to comprehend other people's laws. It is not something that can be done overnight. Muyu sat cross-legged in the array hall. The chaotic yin and yang revolved around him. For a Mahayana stage, to be able to comprehend a domain is basically heaven-defying. I have never heard of anyone who can control multiple domains. Little Shuai sat on Little Black's head and bit into a chicken drumstick. However, when Little Shuai was eating halfway, he suddenly stopped and said in puzzlement, It is not impossible, because your Yu Qian Kuan is very unusual. Moreover, I seem to remember that it is not impossible to control multiple domains. It is just that you need to be in a higher realm. When Mu Yu's Yu Qian Kuan was comprehending, he tried to start from a very small aspect. In fact, he comprehended many small domains to form Yu Qian Kuan, this somewhat inconceivable domain. I wonder what Master's domain is. Mu Yu pondered. His master was a very powerful person, but he never knew how powerful his master's domain was. He also never had the chance to see it. My white-bearded old man's domain is very powerful. That's right, I vaguely remember that the domain he controls. What is it? What is it? Little Shuai was biting the chicken drumstick halfway when he suddenly stopped. His eyes widened, and regardless of the oil stains on the drumstick falling on Little Black's head, he just sat there and racked his brains. Muyu did not disturb Little Shuai. Although Little Shuai was a bit unreliable, the things in his head were very useful most of the time. I can't remember, but I remember a sentence. It seems that no one can transcend the rules of this world, but we can use our hearts to comprehend the rules of this world. The heavenly Tao has set up many rules, but in fact, many rules are established by us. Looking at this world from different perspectives, there will be different surprises. Little Shuai stood on Little Black's back with his hands behind his back, with a profound look. Did Master say this sentence? Of course it's me who would say something so philosophical. Little Handsome chuckled. Muyu was non-committal. He did not need to think about it to know that this kind of words came from his master. He carefully pondered over his master's words and found that what his master said was indeed very reasonable. Everything in this world was within a certain set of rules. The heavenly Tao had established rules, but everyone was also establishing their own rules. For example, if a sect wanted to develop, they had to create their own rules. They could not kill their fellow sect members, could not bend the law for personal gain, could not collude with outsiders. These were all rules that people established themselves. Another example was that a Xiantian array foundation was worth 200,000 spirit stones, but if you only spent 20 spirit stones, no one would be willing to sell it to you. This was also a rule, but Muyu thought about it again. Many times, everyone was breaking the rules and walking a path outside the rules. Those who wanted to kill their fellow sect members, those who wanted to bend the law for personal gain, those who colluded with outsiders to harm their fellow sect members, they did not follow the rules, but acted outside the rules. The rules of this world were originally set by people. Even if flowers bloomed and withered, it was also defined by people. The words sun and moon were words in themselves. It was just that the people who created these words stipulated that the word sun represented the fireball that appeared during the day, and the word moon represented the jade disk that appeared during the night. But in fact, if the people who created these words had called the fireball during the day the moon and the jade disk at night the sun, there was nothing wrong with it. It was just that people's preconceived notions had caused this rule to be passed down and become common sense. There was no path on the ground, but when someone stepped on a path, many people would involuntarily walk this path. The existence of this path was equivalent to a rule. The first person called the fireball that appeared during the day the sun, so later on, everyone also called it the sun. The rules were originally set by people. Muyu looked at the chaotic yin and yang. He suddenly remembered that when he was in the array hall, he had to understand the 81 inscriptions when he competed with Chang Tiansheng, the sect master of the Talisman sect, for the control of the chaotic yin and yang. Chang Tianqing had only defined one type of inscription, and the 81 inscriptions were subdivided within this type. Mu Yu, on the other hand, looked at the 81 inscriptions from a long-term perspective because inscriptions could represent far more than just one type. In the past, Deadwood's father had told him that the ancient inscriptions didn't have a specific meaning, but they were all connected. When you looked at the meaning of an inscription, you would know what it meant. Once you defined the meaning of the first inscription, the rest of the inscriptions would find their own meaning. It was like you were creating meanings for the 81 inscriptions. This was the rule that he was defining. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.